which will then be followed by board comments. And we are on item number 3, return to school.
Yes. Madam Board President, I shall begin. First comment comes from Michelle K. Dear Elk Grove Unified School District, please allow the kids to go back to school as normal. Those who aren't comfortable, maybe there could be an option to keep them home and have teachers who are also fearful be in charge of their education. Please allow sports, extracurricular activities, band be as usual. Of course, being more mindful of hand hygiene and staying home if you are well. Thank you. Next comment, no name. Based on the EGA survey results regarding the reopening of schools for the 2020-21 school year, I'd like to voice my concerns as a parent and a secondary teacher. I recognize the hardships and equity created by distance learning for students, parents, teachers, and admin. However, the risks of physically returning to school at the beginning of the school year far exceeds the rewards. I fear for the safety of my daughter, my students, colleagues, and myself if we return to school in August. We can only trust the health measures that we personally take. Regardless of Newsom's announcement that masks will be mandatory, that does not ensure that everyone will wear masks at all times. Maintain proper distances and practice good hygiene. To go back in August is dangerous, and I ask the board not bend to the will of those selfish enough to put their own desires for comfort and normalcy above the greater good of our community. I hope the board will consider maintaining distance learning measures at least until term 2. With protests and reopening, it is too soon to truly decide whether returning in August is actually a safe and responsible decision to make. The next comment, no name. Educators need time to prepare lesson, whether for distance learning or hybrid or in person. So a decision should be given to us today. We also deserve to be safe. We want to teach our kids, but the numbers are rising and people not social distancing, not wanting to wear a mask, puts everyone at risk. What model offers protection for students, staff, and our community? Also, if a hybrid model is used, how does that impact teaching hours each week? The next comment comes from Kelsey Maston. Having virtually attended the entire June 9th school board meeting, it was clear from Mark Cerruti's presentation that a team of school staff had already been selected and have begun creating a return to school plan prior to the June 9th or 30th board meeting. This sends a clear message to the board, to this board and EGUSD parents that it does not matter what the board or parents say, that a decision will be made internally. Only after the June 9th hearing was a survey sent out to parents seeking our wishes on returning to school. A common response from parents completing the survey was that no one felt that their responses would make any difference to the plan. Mr. Forcina was the only person on this board to pause the discussion and call out this fact, that the team selected to return to school plan were selected without considering each person's individual outlook on returning to school amidst the virus, or what schools would they be associated with. Mr. Forcina was also the only person on the board to make the suggestion to survey the parents themselves on our desires. The CDC continues to report that students under the age of 10 make up only 1% of COVID cases, not deaths, with mortality rates of children negligible. Meanwhile, the 2019-2020 flu has already claimed the lives of 185 children between the ages of 0 and 18. Why must we flip our educational practices on its head for a virus that is not impacting our youth, even though every year we deal with cold and flu season without such drastic alterations? EGUSD was bold in leading the way to close the 2019-2020 school season early, awaiting more information on the virus. The results are now in, and we must make decisions based on facts, not fear. EGUSD can now once again be bold and lead the way for other school districts in deciding to send our children back full-time with logical, minimally invasive education and prevention in our schools. Let's be bold, Elk Grove. The next comment comes from Amber. I want to express my concern for the next school year. My daughter was born with a cleft palate. She has undergone 2 surgeries and currently has an IEP. She has had many issues with speech, and we are finally to a place where her speech has made her major improvements, but having so many restrictions when school begins will have negative effects on our daughter. I believe we not only send our children to school to learn, but to grow and develop as individuals. Our children learn to share and socialize. If we take that away, what does school then look like? In my opinion, a prison. Isolating children and making them wear masks is wrong, especially when children are not dying from this virus. This will not be our children's new normal. I also find it virtually impossible to break up in times or days for children. Teachers will become worn out and our children's education will suffer. If this is what the new normal looks like the next year, we would like an alternative option, whether it be distance learning or tutoring. There needs to be other options, especially with our daughter having an IEP. Thank you for your time, Amber Robinson. The next one comes from Vonda Long. Hello, fellow board members. Please have the kids return to school full time because distance learning is not the way to teach our young kids. My youngest child needed me to keep him on task and focus when I needed to work as well. If the school district is truly working for our kids' interests, then please provide the education that they need in class because they are our future. DL does not help them learn if they don't understand the material alone, and then who will help them? Also, distance learning won't help them grow as a person when we want a well-rounded person, people to contribute to society. Thank you. No name. I was reaching out to the board that while considering distance learning, we should also acknowledge the quality education provided. As the educational year comes to an end, I assure you that a majority of students have not learned the lessons that were incredibly pivotal because of the distance learning. I want to insist that if a number of cases or tolls of COVID-19 declined or came to a safe range, students should be allowed back to the classroom to resume their normal way of education with needed precautions. The next comes from Brian Cutting. For secondary students, it appears that there are two proposals, but in either case, students spend 8 hours in the classroom. There is the 4-day, 2-hour each option and the 2-day, 4-hour each option. I would ask the board consider the use of resources for families. Many of us live some distance from the school. For my family, it takes 30 minutes to drive to the school to drop our carpool off, then 30 minutes to drive home. Repeat that at the end of the day. It would seem foolish to spend 2 hours in the car each day for 2 hours of instruction. I'm asking the board to adopt the 2-day, 4-hour option, the 2-cohort, 6-period option, as I believe this will be a better use of resources, less time wasted driving to and fro, better for families with children in multiple schools. The next comes from Kristen. Commenting on the agenda for how many hours/days kids will be at school this coming fall 2020 school year, would prefer the 2-day/4-hour option. Thank you. April Patterson, referencing the phase 2 presentation/transition plan, will siblings be placed in the same cohort? Can families request this? It's already going to be an adjustment with schedules to accommodate transportation for in-person instruction half days. Some kids live too far to walk, are not old enough to use public transportation, or walk alone and not eligible for district transportation. The next, I believe, is a no name. No, from Cox, Mr. Cox. Please consider a strictly distance learning model for the start of the 2020-21 school year. The hybrid models proposed for both elementary and secondary schools forces teachers to be divided in their attention too much. We need to focus on one thing and do it exceptionally well. The hybrid model does not allow for that. Additionally, as parents with three kids at 3 schools, how can the district possibly ensure that my students are on the same schedule so that my younger child and my special needs child are not home alone? Further, as a staff member that is considered at risk, being forced to be in the classroom puts my health in jeopardy. Transportation issues are also clearly an unsolvable problem at the moment. We already have troubles with getting enough buses for both special education students as well as regular routes to and from school. One of the models suggests that secondary students be an AM/PM cohort. How on earth would you manage for schools such as Albione and Pleasant Grove, where students are coming all the way from Anatolia area and need transportation? With the driver shortage, there is no way to ensure that they will even have a bus, much less be able to appropriately social distance on the bus. For social emotional components, schools have worked long and hard to earn the trust and understanding of students and families. If teachers and staff are forced to enforce mask policies and social distancing, it turns teachers and staff into the enemy for students, which breaks down the trust and safety we have worked tirelessly to establish. I have a lot more I could say, but I know time is critical. I ask that you please consider a strictly distance learning approach for all students and staff until such time as we can as we can safely resume a full classroom schedule. Thank you. The next has no name. With the hybrid schedule proposed for elementary, what accommodations will be made to ensure there are enough daycare spots available for the children working parents? In my experience, a lot of schools on-site daycares were near or capacity during regular school years prior to COVID. The next one comes from AH. The proposed school year schedule seems incredibly difficult for parents of multiple children in different grades and teachers to navigate. I may have to quit my job just to be able to monitor my children's distance learning and or accommodate all of the pickup and drop-offs. I sincerely hope this plan is rethought. Please allow an option for children to attend school full-time. Thank you. The next is no name. I have some questions regarding the proposed 2021 school year model. Are there any differences for year-round calendar students? In terms of elementary, would there be a way to request to be on the same cohort group, A, B, as another family? Some of us rely on families for childcare and pick up and drop off support. Having our household on one group and support families on the other would be problematic. Would every effort be made to have siblings, members of the same household be on the same cohort in elementary across various grade levels? For example, we're a D-track family with 2 fourth graders and an incoming kinder in our household. Would they be all in a similar cohort so that they attended school or that they attend school on the same days of the week? 4, would this schedule be for the whole school year, or could it be changed back a more traditional school day if COVID-19 vaccine or herd immunity are achieved mid-year? 5, what is the deadline for family to decide if they want their children to be on the classroom schedule versus a fully distance learning schedule? Can this choice be changed at any time of the school year? 6, given the Sacramento County Public Health Office and California state mandate for wearing masks do not currently have exclusions for schools or child care situations at this time, would the students be wearing the mask whole day regardless of grade level and if the mandate remains unchanged at the start of school? 7, what happens if a child has a family member test positive for COVID during the school year and the child remains symptomatic? Would they and their whole cohort group have a quarantine or just student? 8, what happens when a classroom teacher is sick or has family members that is sick? Will there be sub teachers used? Would subs be used in a specific school site or region only if utilized? The next is no name. Our kids need a full return to the classroom 5 days a week. I will remove my children from Elk Grove Unified School District if this option is not provided. I'm very disappointed in the recommendations. There should be an option for families who wish for their children to return to school. This is absolutely ridiculous. From Kim, 2020 school year, for an elementary teacher's perspective. 1, our students cannot be properly served academically and emotionally based on the model proposed for many reasons. 2, if I only have 8 hours per week with my students, I need to focus all time on instruction. When can assessment take place? It drives instruction and provides grades. These cannot be completed during home learning hours. 3, providing distance learning from school is difficult. No cameras on desktop monitors and terrible Wi-Fi, no Zoom small group meetings. 4, our kids need interaction support care. I'm tired of being scared of my kiddos who may be forced into longer times in a negative home environment. The next comment is no name. I love the idea of my children getting some FaceTime with classmates and teachers, but I am very concerned about the logistics of being a full-time working parent who has to work to take care of her family and school being 2 days a week and partial days. How does that work? Even if I place my children in childcare versus school, that does not solve the problem of children being together in large groups. It just shifts them. Secondly, I can't expect a daycare provider who is not trained in education to take the responsibility of distance learning. This means that our family will have to spend what little time we have together in the evening catching up on the work missed. A hybrid model sounds good, but is a logical nightmare for many families. It favors a 2-parent household where one parent is working and the other is a caretaker. Is this the demographic of the majority of our district? A hybrid model forces parents to choose between the livelihood of their families and the education of their students. I'm also the parent of a special education student in EGUSD. His classes are intensive and have always been small. He is so far behind already. How will he ever get the support he needs without his educational team of teachers? Aides, speech therapist, and occupational therapist. Is it possible to consider more than 2 days a week for our populations most in need of support, such as special education and English language learners? I strongly hope that the board will reconsider listening to all stakeholders to put together a plan that is equitable and supportive of all families. I feel as enough detail has not been paid to logistics, nor do the proposed plans seem to reflect the needs of our community. The next comes from No Name. First of all, I realize that the board and district have a very hard job in making a difficult decision on what the upcoming school year will look like. In looking at the proposed hybrid models, I'm sorry to say that they do not seem manageable at all. In fact, they seem completely overwhelming from both a teacher perspective and a parent perspective. The district needs to move away from such a complicated plan and turn to something much more simplified that will better accommodate parents, families, and teaching staff. Most families I have heard from are either 1, completely uncomfortable with sending their children to school at all, or 2, want their children back in school 100%, Monday through Friday. Why not offer 2 simple cohorts for families to choose from, such as Cohort A, 100% in-person learning, or Cohort B, 100% online learning. With the percentage of families who could choose 100% virtual, this would naturally bring down the class sizes for those who want their children to attend in person. With such a model, parents will be appeased and no one, including teachers, will have to juggle such a confusing hybrid model of rotating cohorts. The next comes from Renee. No distance learning. Kids need social interaction along with in-class education. The COVID-19 has less impact on these younger children than other age groups. Let kids be kids. The next comes from Colleen Childers. This is regarding specifically with regard to elementary school cohorts. I feel it would make more sense to have these cohorts attend campus consecutive days. That is, Cohort A would attend Tuesday, Wednesday, and Cohort B would attend Thursday, Friday. This way, the classroom would need deep cleaning only 2 times per week instead of 4, saving money. And if there is a class project being worked on, it can be left out for the teacher to pick up with the kids the following day. I think this also will allow a greater sense of continuity for the children. My 3rd grader told me she'd rather go 2 days in a row than have a split schedule. The next comes from Christina Esguera. I think the best way for these younger kids to learn is to be at school on campus and minimizing distance learning. There are a lot of parents who work and cannot constantly facilitate teaching their kids at home. Also, with the older kids, middle and high school, if we continue to have them learn only via distance, it is not good for their mental well-being. Mental health is a big issue. Also, with special ed kids, we can't have them doing only distance learning with kids. This kids will regress. The next comes from Anthony D. Roseville and Rockland Unified School Districts already had their boarding meetings last week on 6/22. I have copy pasted the email from their districts. My question is, will Elk Grove be following this model? Below is a copy paste from their email. I personally think giving parents the option is the best choice. Every family's comfort level and work-life situation is different, so having this choice would be best. If our district goes with this model for the 2020-2021 school year, we'll be also working with Champions Academy or another full-time online program. I appreciate your time. Thank you. The message is attached. The next comes from No Name. Dear board members, I have serious concerns about your proposed hybrid model for the upcoming school year. As a full-time working parent household who is going to pick up my child after her half day of school, who is going to help my child log in, access curriculum during distance learning days? Certainly not her daycare provider. With this proposed hybrid plan, children who are forced to be in daycare on their distance learning days will lose out on instruction. Do you expect parents to log into Zoom instruction after work at 6 p.m.? This hybrid model caters to stay-at-home parents who have the flexibility to taxi their kids to and from school at odd times and who have the ability to stay home and with them distance learning days to help them. This is not realistic for our family as well as many, many other families in this district. The next comes from C. Thomas. Please think of us working parents when deciding what to do for the next school year. Safety is key, and I know this will not be an easy task. During this last online learning, it took an already stressful time and made it worse. My husband and I are first responders working 12-hour shifts trying to help a high school student and special needs junior high student. It was one of the most stressful times in our family's life. I know we are not the only ones with challenges if online learning continues. Please consider choices. If people want online learning, great. If they want their children to go to campus, great. Yeah, I know it's asking a lot, but I'm worried about our children's future. Thank you. The next comes from Susan Morrison Guerres. Good evening. Thank you to the board and all of the district administration and unions for all of their hard work. I have been an educator at EGUSD for 16 years. I can't begin to tell you how much I have missed my students since they closing on March 7th. Having said that, it seems that I am being asked to come back and teach in August. Although it is a hybrid model, I will now be exposed to 5 to 10 times more people than I have been exposed to since March. If I were to go back into the classroom, I would no longer be able to help my parents and would have to stay 6 feet away from them until there's a vaccine or new scientific protocols. Here's my question, or maybe statement. Everyone who is making this decision is not going back into the classroom to teach. Parents, board members, and district administration is making that decision for us without being the ones that are at the front lines. Currently, outnumbers are on the rise. Simply put, I am scared. From Ted Karras, I have 7 children, all autistic, who need to return to school for special ed, not distance learning. Computer work for them is impossible. Not going to school has totally disrupted their life and behavior. The next is no name. Dear school board members and Superintendent Hoffman, as a teacher and parent in this district, I am concerned for both my safety and the safety of students when reopening schools this fall. It would be prudent in light of increased case numbers to start the school year with a full distance learning. I expect that there will be numerous interruptions to attending school this fall. As cases of COVID arise, it would be more difficult for everyone, students, parents, and teachers to have attending school in flux. How will working parents be prepared for temporary closures? Teachers will be adjusting things last minute, which makes it difficult to provide quality education. Children thrive with consistency, and what we are facing is a ridiculous amount of inconsistency. Distance learning, while not ideal, provides consistency, safety, and allows for teachers and parents to be able to plan ahead. We have had a shortage of substitute teachers over the last few years. How will the district be able to provide subs as teachers that need to quarantine? Imagine all of those days when we are emailed that there is a sub shortage and we need to help cover for each other. That has likely become the norm as cases of COVID rise and the flu season hits. Who will teach our students? When we shut down last spring, we didn't provide distance learning, but provided emergency learning. If the board makes a decision today and site administrators follow quickly, teachers would have time to prepare. We could record videos, prep online lessons, and learn how to better use online tools and resources. We could provide daily Zoom sessions for connecting with students, answering questions, and explaining difficult concepts. Students should have the option to attend the Zoom sessions or not based on their needs. I urge you to reconsider returning to in-person school this fall. Sorry, it's difficult to maneuver. This comes from No Name. Thank you for looking out for our children and coming up with a proposal that keeps students and staff safe. Many parents who want students to attend 5 days a week do not understand that there is no way to social distance with 6 feet in the classroom with 24 or more children. I want the virus to be eradicated also, but it doesn't mean it is a reality. We have to deal with the new reality and constraints that we are in. Kids wearing a mask will not be effective as little children will take them off within an hour at best. Social distancing and masking wearing are 2 protocols recommended for safety. Children turning full-time will not allow either recommendations. Thus, how will the district be able to protect students as well as staff? Cleaning more often and numerous hand washing will help, but have you seen little children? Some will still sneeze into their hands and some even pick their boogers in the elementary schools. Restaurants and daycares are only allowed to open dine-in with half occupants. The same rules should apply to schools. Some parents keep saying that parents who are afraid to open the schools will do full distance learning, thus decreasing the amount of students attending physical school. They don't take into account that it will also take away a teacher who will be physically distant teaching in the classroom to teach distance learning. Thus, the amount of children in the classroom does not change. A teacher who has students attending campus will not be assigned to a student who is doing full distance learning. Thus, the teacher that is teaching on campus will have the same amount of students, 24 plus, in a classroom. What were the results of the teacher survey? Did most teachers even feel safe coming back to school, 24 plus children in class? I do want my children to attend school only if they can social distance with less kids in the classroom, which is why I voted for the hybrid model. I do not want my kids to do full distance learning, as they still need to see the friends, but at a safe space. The only reason why not as many children have the virus yet is the fact that schools have not opened. Schools and daycares are in the places that children tend to get sick, because it's a place where they're in close contact with each other, with other kids most of the day. I commend the district for coming up with a proposal and makes the hard decision to be safe for all the stakeholders. The next one, it comes from No Name. I'm sure, like other parents, I'm writing about the proposed 2020-21 school year. Regardless of the decision that will be made, there will be families that will be unhappy with the situation. Families will be in a rough situations, having to rearrange schedules or having someone unable to watch their children. Families who are uncomfortable having their kids return to school, or others who do not want to do distance learning. Ultimately, the health and safety of our kids, as well as all of the people with whom we trust to teach them, should be a top priority, especially with the increase in cases and spikes that we are seeing throughout the country and the entire U.S. Safety is paramount. Teachers cannot be expected to teach class 5 days a week and then go home and not only teach via distance learning, but care for their own families as well. I suggest with the hybrid program, instead of students meeting twice a week, maybe lower that to once a week and then have the remainder be distance learning. The next comes from No Name. Regarding the plan for school in fall, the plan is not sustainable for so many families. You are looking for education equality. With working families and children at multiple schools, there is no way that this plan can be equitable. Parents of young children who need help will be juggling between the kids and their own work. How is that fair? Parents with kids in multiple schools trying to figure out how to get them to and from, how will this work? This is still too much distance learning, with which in my opinion, even with some extra training during the summer, was a disaster. Will not be to the level of education that EGUSD is known for. Many high school kids received no instruction during those 6 weeks because teachers didn't want to deal with Zoom calls. This is really unacceptable. You cannot throw out our children's education away. My sophomore might as well be given his diploma now because he will not be receiving an appropriate education under this plan. Please do better. The next, it comes from No Name, I believe. I am deeply concerned about the opening of schools in the fall, even with the proposed hybrid model. When COVID numbers were not even 1,000 in the state, you made the quick decision to shut down the schools for the safety of students, staff, and the families, which absolutely saved lives. Now, with California's numbers reaching over 200,000, we are speaking about opening them back up. Nothing has changed about the virus. It is still dangerous, and we are seeing a greater number of young people being affected. Studies have shown that even if you survive the virus, there are often long-lasting consequences, even in healthy people. Respiratory illnesses, strokes, brain damage, lung damage, heart attacks, etc. The numbers in California are continuing to increase, and Sacramento County was put on the watch list last week because so many new cases. Governor Newsom just today is backtracking and closing all the bars in Sacramento County and others. So what is next? And when will it be schools having to close again? As such, I believe it is best for all involved if we start the year with 100% distance learning. Children need consistency, and with numbers continuing to increase, it may unfortunately get to the point where schools will need to shut down again. Why are we not looking at other countries who have already faced this dilemma? So many schools in other countries opened up with precautions in place, way more than what you are suggesting, and had to shut back down soon after due to the outbreaks. Constant opening, closing, reopening, etc. is not in the best interest of anyone. Teachers need time to plan quality curriculum. Parents need time to plan for children or childcare arrangements, and students will be faced with even more unknowns and inconsistencies, which will only hinder their mental, emotional health and even more. Perhaps the most cautious and prudent thing to do right now, instead of rushing to open, is to start the year with distance learning so all parents involved can plan for that. Then in a few months, reevaluate and see if the numbers have gone down. If so, then transition to a hybrid model with the intention of eventually being full in-person teaching when it is safe enough.
Auntie, that one was time.
Oh, that one's 3?
Yes, my line's going off.
Okay. Next. This one is no name. I'm writing this as a teacher who has taught the elementary grades for 5 years. Social distancing is difficult enough for adults to follow, so remember that teachers need to be supported to have a safe environment for their students. Please consider having students and teachers wear some sort of face covering. If there is a medical situation, face shields can be an option. The school should be responsible to take temperature checks and well screenings. If children teachers have symptoms of being sick, they should be asked to rest at home until they're 100% well. As for the school schedule, it would make more sense to have back-to-back days, and cleaning would be easier since there wouldn't be a whole different class coming in. The schedule options should include a full distance learning option for students, and that their spots can still be saved for the following year. It would help lessen the amount of students in a classroom and help the parents that aren't comfortable with sending their children to school in this unprecedented time. The next comes from No Name. The importance and appreciation for teachers came flooding back in April and May as families experienced distance learning. The hard work of the teachers to learn new online platforms, put together lessons, and make connections with students seems to have been suddenly forgotten, as teachers may now be thrust back into classrooms and exposed to COVID. Teachers and their families' health and lives are in your hands. Don't bring us back too soon. The next comes from Florence DeCoven. As a teacher, community member, and a parent, I am very concerned and uncomfortable about the proposed reopening plan. Up until this point, I have had great confidence in the district's response to COVID-19, ensuring the safety, equity, and integrity of all its constituents. However, this plan hastily overlooks safety of our district's teachers and students at the secondary level. Many of our classes are well over 30, so simply splitting students into 2 cohorts does not maintain social distancing in the classroom. That, coupled with the mixed messaging in the proposed plan about how masks are to be used, is a sure recipe for spreading the virus, confusion at each site, and ultimately more to the plate of teachers in the classroom. Many cases are increasing due to indoor gatherings that do not maintain social distancing, not proper mask wearing, as Dr. Kassirier shared last week. A small classroom with 15 plus people is no different than a family gathering in a home, and teachers, the secondary level, will be interacting with multiple cohorts of students each day. This puts teachers at an inequitable risk of exposure. Additionally, the board has not addressed the fact that COVID-19 hits communities differently. The 95823 zip code, which includes Prairie, Union House, Jackman, and Valley, has one of the highest increase of cases recently in all of Sacramento County. The board has failed to address this issue of inequity, and board member Chet Madison has stayed far too quiet and complacent when it comes to standing up for the area in which he serves during prior meetings when given the chance to ask questions and challenge his fellow board members. I'm concerned that board member Madison is not speaking up for his community. This proposed plan hastily rushed all students back to school without considering the blatant differences across communities in this very large district. This is not equity. Lastly, I personally have young children at home, one of whom is higher risk, and I know this is the same for many other educators. I love my job, my students, and working for EUSD. However, I did not sign up to be a frontline worker in a pandemic. I do not feel safe returning to work in this plan. I urge you to not vote to approve this plan. The next comes from No Name. As a teacher in the district and a parent of a first grader and fourth grader, I'm very concerned with the proposal for next year. The distance learning at the end of the last year was not a success in this house, especially while trying to manage my own classroom. The teachers did a great job, but distance learning was not best for my children. For example, I was trying to teach my own class online, support a kindergartner, and had to spend 2.5 hours one-on-one with my third grader in order for him to complete his assignments. They need to be in the classroom 5 days a week. parents were all at home, so the option to do distance learning was a good choice, even if it was not a success for all students. This option does not work for dual income families. Our family does not have an adequate support system to pick up our children at 12 and support their distance learning for the remainder of the day. There also will not be a parent at home to support them through distance learning and general supervision on full days when not in a classroom. This is a working parent's nightmare. Please consider distance learning for those who are interested and send our children back to school full time. They need social interaction. They need their teacher, not on just a computer screen. They need regular routine and get back to normal. Please reconsider this proposal so that our children are not suffering anymore. They will adapt to school at school, but they are not doing well at home. The next comes from Kim. As of Monday, June 29th, the American Pediatrics Association released an article that has advocated for the return to the classroom for students. This article notes that while some changes need to be made, including more distance and cleaning, the minimal risk posed with students returning to school far outweighs the negative outcomes, lost learning, mental health problems, unequal access, etc., of not returning. For those parents who want their children to be with their teachers and friends for more than 8 hours per week versus the standard 33 hours, please hear us. Our opinions are supported by science, yet the board doesn't seem capable of listening to our needs. It seems that there must be a fear of getting sued or another objective. Why do we not have a voice? The current model is desperately lacking in time for instruction, time for understanding, and nearly impossible for working parents to navigate. The next comes from No Name. If students return to school following a hybrid model or traditional school schedule, what will be the plan if a student, teacher, or family member of a student or teacher tests positive for COVID-19? Will students need to be quarantined for 2 weeks that are in the same class? Or will the entire school or district go back to distance learning for 2 weeks or longer? Will parents be notified if there's positive test results of someone at the school so parents can decide whether or not their students should be self-quarantined? A written plan should be provided to all parents, not only going back to school, but what happens if the virus hits an individual at a school or one of their family members? At what point would a school be closed and revert back to distance learning? And when could specific students be required to self-quarantine and to do distance learning during the quarantine period, etc.? It would be helpful to know what to expect so we won't have to scramble last minute to any school schedule changes. Thank you.
Ms. Pinkerton,
Yes.
did you read the names of the last people, and we will make sure the last ones get out? We've had a wide breadth of information, and we've hit the 38-minute mark as we did on the previous grouping, and then we have 2 more groups to listen to.
Yes, I shall read the names of the remaining roughly 40. Alicia Bennett, Jesse, Jamie Alexander, Talisa Haddad, Derek Compton, Mylene Nintensen, Lexi Lyman, Lana Pettigrew, Carmen Garcia, Kristen, Elizabeth, Mark Weber, Shital, Dina Tiemochko, Danielle Hatler, Elise Kuiken, Patricia, Joshua Nitensen, and that completes the return to school list.
Thank you. Staff, will you make sure those are marked specifically so we know which ones were not read out loud on tonight? We'll move on to our next category of health.
Yes, the next category of health, there are approximately, I think, 3 or 4 of these. From Joel and Kim Boyd. I believe the proposed COVID-19 modified school schedule is extremely risky for our elementary school age children. As an ICU nurse and respiratory therapist in the community, we are asking the district and the board to consider allowing elementary school age children to be on a full-time school schedule with contact limited to 24 students and 1 teacher. The currently proposed school schedule, most parents will have to use another or multiple forms of childcare to supplement when school is not face-to-face teaching. Using multiple forms of childcare is more opportunity for virus transmission between different groups of kids and the community. The district is not offering childcare support, and parents will be desperate for childcare, thus forced to rely on large daycares or other crowded opportunities for childcare. This is setting our schools up for a breeding ground for virus transmission. Many children will be a large daycare setting one day, then the next day with their school classmates. I'm confident in the district plan to provide the strict health screening at the beginning of school, health questionnaire, temperature checks, frequent hand washing, staggering of recess lines, frequent sanitation of services. One additional recommendation that is utilized in hospitals is the use of a UV light sanitation to kill surface viruses and bacteria. This should be done for every classroom every night. Additional recommendations for classroom modifications would be now shared or no shared equipment, example, pencils, scissors, crayons, etc. Position the desks in rows, no sitting in close groups. Having lunch in the classroom with hands and surface sanitation first. Families should be given two options. One option should be 100% distance learning for families who are not comfortable returning to their school. The second option should be full-time classroom with our previously listed modifications. For the safety of our teachers, students, and the community, please let the children who return to school attend full-time only. The next comes from Nailene Tavares. I'm concerned about the health of our students and staff with the current plans of physical reopening schools. I was alarmed to see the amount of students in each cohort. To enclose half of a class of students in a space for a long period of time is not safe. To adhere to the CDC guidelines, there will have to be a radius of 6 feet around each student. That would not work for every classroom space. Therefore, students will have to wear a mask for the entire morning. If there is a minimum of 6 feet per person and masks are taken off, what will be the viral load at the end of 4 hours with an asymptomatic person being present? How does our ventilation system work with a contagion? My suggestion is to begin with the in-person plans that will help to minimize exposure. For example, an elementary class of 28 students could be split up into 4 teaching mornings of 7 students per day, 4 cohorts, Tuesday through Friday. They could even be designed by ability. The focus will be on language, arts, and math. Think of the differentiation and targeting of instruction that could occur. The afternoon sessions could be designed as online teaching with these small groups of students. As in the original plan, Mondays could be used for whole class online instruction or meetings, teacher planning, staff meetings, grade level meetings, and online interventions with students. Why isn't this board meeting being conducted in person in half the capacity, everyone 6 feet apart, and no masks, as is possibly being recommended for students and teachers? Safety should be the main priority when reopening our district's classrooms. As the pandemic decreases in severity, a large cohort model could be a transition as we work towards a complete physical return to school. The last comment under health. Good evening, members of the board and community. As I watched the board meeting on the 22nd, I was astounded at the lack of care for the safety of staff in EGUSD by some members of the board. I was also astounded at the lack of knowledge about student behavior. Many community comments were made that a staff can't get a students to follow simple rules like no gum chewing. This is an example of just one of the similar rules or smaller rules that we can't get students to follow. Teachers and staff do not have the proper tools and resources to be able to create a learning environment safe for everyone. Who will be ultimately responsible for executing safety protocols? What resources will teachers be provided to ensure the safety of themselves and all students? What are the consequences for students not following safety protocols? Reading the proposition put forth by the district, I continue to have those questions. I appreciate all their hard work as it is an incredibly daunting task. However, all of it is moot if there aren't detailed safety protocols in place that make sense and are realistic. It was good to hear that a pesticide-free cleaner is available in the district, but disheartening when it was announced the students can't use the surfaces for an hour after use. This creates a problem for scheduling classes and teachers. I heard incorrectly. If I heard incorrectly, please clarify. After a member of the board shared their vote prior to the hearing the concerns of the community in which they represent on social media, I am even more astounded. Pushing one's personal beliefs over the safety of the community and those who work there is incredibly irresponsible. I am a parent of 2 students in the district, a wife, a teacher, and a teacher myself. We both have parents that are in poor health. They need to be able to count on us to provide them with support and resources physically and emotionally. How are we to do that if we are to put at risk of being, if we are put at risk of being exposed daily exponentially by the number of personal contacts. Since March, we have been trying to mitigate the spread of the virus by following the rules: stay at home, social distancing, and the wearing of masks or facial shields. As we have seen around our community, we can't even get adults to follow the rules. Not only that, we have families that simply will not wear a mask or facial covering. What do we do in that situation? Well, we as teachers are telling you that there are too many safety concerns with even half the students going to school at a time to even consider the district's proposition of returning. We also need guidance on what happens if we, as a staff member, get the virus, and what kind of academic accommodations our students will receive if they get the virus, which needs to be the same district-wide. Not to mention what the protocol is for teachers to staff and students if one of our students gets the virus. Again, there are too many variables. As scientists and doctors have said, young people tend to recover from the virus with very few complications, but that doesn't keep them from spreading it to people like my parents and my husband's parents, who will most likely have severe complications. That is a risk that myself and my other teachers are not willing to take,
Okay, it's
and
time.
we're insulted. And the last section,
Yes, please.
activities. There is no name. I am sure which number I'll be addressing, but I want to say something. I'm a drum major with the marching band at Pleasant Grove High School. Next year will be my senior year. I've looked forward to being a drum major and for my senior seasons for so long. By August and September, it's unlikely that COVID-19 will be as rampant and widespread as it is now. I advocate for my band program and for all of its participants. We want a football season and the chance to perform at as many events as we can. This is vitally important to the health of our program and the mental health of its participants. This is a huge part of the year for us and for a lot of us. Band events are an escape from the things that stress us out. We've already had our trips to Santa Cruz and Disneyland taken from us. I want myself and the members of my program to enjoy as much of our limited time in high school as we can. The next one, no name. Once more, I would like to respectfully push for the security of VAPA courses in EGUSD schools. With the school year looming closer, many of my peers and I have our hearts anxiously hoping for the sense of normalcy. Many of us are holding onto the hopes for events like band camp and are desperate to return to our safe haven where we make the most memories and grow the most as musicians and young people. I understand if social distancing precautions must be made, but I respectfully ask that with these guidelines in place, that we can continue VAPA programs, safe not only for our physical health, but also mental and social. The next, no name. If the current situation improves and the number of tolls of COVID-19 declines or stabilize, students should be allowed to resume their preferred sports with needed safety measures and precautions. The next, the COVID-19 pandemic has created unique challenges for the school district, one of which is the development of healthy practices in the education of the visual and performing arts. I believe that the students in the district would greatly benefit from both hiring a full-time VAPA director to help administrate the needs of maintaining arts education, and to also establish a process where students can undergo health screenings prior to attending their classes. Proper medical screening would go a long way to alleviate health concerns and would allow students to still be able to receive an arts education, but establishing this process in a manner that ensures safety of students while preserving and enhancing the quality of the arts program within the district would be best administered with the input of a VAPA director to help navigate such challenges. While there continues to be widespread concern in the community about the potential risks that children face of being infected by the coronavirus, I believe that this board has the ability to provide continued leadership to mitigate these concerns without having to compromise students' needs to participate in the arts. I respectfully request the school board to take action on these considerations and thank the board for their time. This next comes from Dawn French. I am writing today as a parent in support of VAPA programs for the 2020-2021 school year. I can attest the importance of the arts in school and what it has done music specifically for our son. Our son, a 2020 graduate of Sheldon High School, has been in music since he was 5 years old. It was then that we bought him his first drum set. In the years since, and with the instruction and leadership of his school music teachers, he has learned to play several instruments and has excelled in percussion. None of this would be possible without the love of music that teachers inspire in their students. The many benefits of music include helping develop the brain in areas such as language and memorization, increasing coordination, instilling the sense of accomplishment, helping to build character, and increasing the bonds and teamwork between students. This is true not only with music, but also in theater, choir, and other VAPA-funded programs. I also have had the privilege to be the treasurer for the Sheldon Band Boosters since 2016 and can tell you that the music program is consistently underfunded by the district. While I cannot speak for the VAPA programs in other schools, I can tell you that the Band Boosters, through student fundraising and donations, pay for many of the things the district should be covering. The school wants students to wear marching uniforms and tuxedos for performances, yet can't afford to clean them. They have instruments and students to play, yet can't afford to maintain and repair them. Band directors need music to play, yet can't afford to buy the sheet music. All these things are heavily supported and funded by the boosters and the students who work tirelessly to fundraise, all while trying to complete their music education in a normal year. I'd be asking for you to increase funding for VAPA programs, but this year I'm begging you at least to keep the funding as is. Thank you. The last, that ends the comments for activities.
Great. So that is the end of our public comment for this agenda item.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much. Well, we will get on to board comment. Mr. Forcina, would you like to start? Please start. Let me rephrase. Mr. Forcina, please start.
I had to unmute. All right, thank you, Madam. Let me start by saying that I am of Italian descent, brought up in a household and community where unless you spoke loudly and were animated, you would generally not be heard. My loud animated comments come from both my upbringing and my passion to do what is best for kids. To some people, the use of a loud voice is considered yelling, which gives them a permission to ignore you. As such, I've chosen to write my comments so that my words and those of many that are not represented here tonight, nor were given the opportunity to participate in the development of the transitional plan, may be heard. At this time, I will not be asking questions about the proposed plan. I have forwarded 29 questions on June 21st, questions that have yet to be fully answered. Questions such as, was there ever a model for the full return to school? What will happen to before and after school programs? How and how often will the teachers provide instruction to students that have questions or do not understand the assignments? Will we have district-wide assessments and finals given all grades, given for all grades in order to assure that all children are receiving an equitable education? How often will teachers be available to students? And how will administrators determine if those contacts are being made? Will teachers be teaching the full curriculum to students, or are we downsizing required curriculum? What about the academy programs in choir and theater and band and ceramics and physical labs and physical education? Those are just some of the 29 questions that I had submitted. Also, with a matter of such importance as deciding EGUSD's 2020-21 educational model, I believe that it is a matter of board policy requiring a vote of the board, which is why this morning I asked for a legal opinion. Tonight, the board is being asked for their thoughts and not their vote. A vote for a flawed plan. The plan in front of us tonight essentially asks teachers, school site administrators, and other school site personnel to work for free in order to have some semblance of how to implement a convoluted plan. And what will happen? Our teachers, as well as others, will respond as they always do. And why? Because they care about our kids. Our site administrators will have to make a Herculean effort to develop schedules. Cohort groups will need to be made to reflect the diversity, learning needs, social needs, and other considerations. Yet, the administrators do not know how many students will be coming to school and who they are, how many want distance learning, who they are, how many teachers will teach, and how many will want distance learning and who they are. Balancing the needs of everyone will be an unrealistic nightmare. The plan requires all staff to be on site throughout their workday so that they can plan, collaborate, teach, and to be available to students. Students in the plan are only going to be at their school site for a limited amount of time, ensuring that the needs of everyone involved will not be met. And what about parents as they scramble for childcare to meet the demands of the transitional plan, especially low-income parents that will undoubtedly be forced to leave their children alone while they work? Also, daycare will surely expose children to greater amounts of humans, grandparents included, than if they were in class full-time. As always, the most vulnerable have the most to lose. It is important for me to say that the issue of returning to school has polarized people to the extent that you are perceived to be a good person or a bad person based on your belief. This is disheartening because there is no plan that prevents 100% of the risk of infection while offering 100% of the benefit of being on campus. I appreciate and I do not discount the work that was done by those that participated on one or more of the 14 committees set up to develop the plan for the 2020-21 school year. However, this process was not inclusive of all stakeholders. I have received over 400 individual communications from students, families, and staff, overwhelmingly stating that they have not been heard and want a full return to school with a full complement of activities. A return to school is absolutely realistic, given that those who do not feel comfortable have several options for learning from home. Such options address the communications I have received from those wanting or needing to continue to shelter in place. I understand that a return to school is not the best option for all families, given specific health concerns of their family members. I am proud of our district for hearing these families and offering at-home options. I am asking that our district hear the families who want to return to school as well. In a statement released by the American Association of Pediatrics encouraging a full return to school, this organization states, schools are fundamental to child and adolescent development and well-being and provide our children and adolescents with academic, instruction, social and emotional skills, safety, reliable nutrition, physical, speech, and mental health, therapy, and opportunities for physical activity, among other benefits. Beyond supporting the educational development of children and adolescents, schools play a critical role in addressing racial and social inequity. And a report from the Netherlands addressing what they are finding as they reopen schools, in summary, says children play a minor role in the spread of the virus overall. It's mainly adult to adult. Today, Johns Hopkins University came out with similar statements. And Dr. Fauci, responding to questions at the Senate hearing, said, we need to do everything we can do to get children back in school. Districts smaller and larger than Elk Grove Unified School District have decided to fully open for the new school year and are providing distance learning for those not comfortable returning. Fresno with approximately 80,000 students, Lodi with approximately 30,000 students, and San Diego Unified with approximately 500,000 students are opening with enhanced safety measures. In our own backyard, there is El Dorado, Roseville, and Woodland. Those districts have put plans in place to manage the risk and again are offering distance learning to those not comfortable returning. Our children have been harmed educationally, physically, socially, and emotionally due to the lack of peer and staff in-person interaction. For many children, school is a safe place and a respite from their home life. For others, it is simply a positive place where they can count on being with adults every day who love them. Not to allow full-day participation at school in both the educational program as well as all activities that provide a connection to school for so many students will be a trip down the same road upon which we have been traveling, yielding the same results. Students disengaged, student learning curtailed, increase in social and emotional struggles, increase in mental health concerns, increase in suicidal ideation, increase in inequity and assessing curriculum, and widening the achievement gap. We have the opportunity and the means to address each and every one of these concerns, as well as others brought on by distance learning. We cannot continue to ignore the needs of our students in the name of absolute safety, as that will never be a reality. Whether we have a full return to school now, in January, or even the 2021 school year, there will always be risk involved. Based on my discussions and input from hundreds of parents, students, and staff, I have stated my support of a full return to full-time educational program with its full complement of activities, and for those not comfortable, the provision of a quality distance educational program that everyone can be proud of. Opening school part-time still carries with it the risk of infection, but does not adequately address student needs. In other words, we are assuming the risk without the benefit. The comments I have made only partially cover the reasons why I believe that the Elk Grove Unified School District should open its doors on a full-time basis. I must not only follow my belief, but also those of district constituents that have stated they have not been heard. Parents, students, and staff from Zender Ranch, Pleasant Grove, Dillard, Cosumnes River, Sunrise, Adriani, Stonegate, McGarvey, and Beatty Elementary Schools, Kerr, Smedberg, Albioni, Harris, and Pinkerton Middle Schools, and Elk Grove, Theo, Franklin, Sheldon, Valley, Monterey Trail, and Pleasant Grove High Schools have all made the effort to express their views. Since Friday night, parents and teachers have voiced their concern for the efficacy of the model presented. As I have said, I truly appreciate and do not discount the work done by many in the development of the transition plan that is in front of us tonight. I respect them for coming forward to do the work. However, the process for selecting those invited to participate was flawed and exclusionary. We all need to make decisions based on what is best for kids. In aggregate, that is our purpose here today and every day. Therefore, since I am not being allowed to vote, I will give my direction. That direction is simple. Scrap the transition plan and develop a plan, if it was not previously done, for a full return to school and for a full quality distance education program. For those parents that look into other options like Elk Grove Charter, like independent study, and they want those options, they are available. Or there's the California Virtual Academy that is a K-12 credited program, has a full curriculum, plus AP, is public and free. We have options. We should no longer rob our children of the education that they need and they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fortino. Next, Ms. Charis Espinoza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just want to clarify, we are both in questions of the staff and discussion. Is that accurate? Are you doing this? You're doing this together?
For the matter of time, Mr. Fortino, did you feel free? You felt like you got the time you needed, correct?
I had plenty, thank you.
Okay. Yes, Nancy, go ahead and fill. I think in the matter of time, we'll get it all done chunk by chunk, and please feel free to say all you feel you need to say as you go.
Okay, good stuff. Okay, so I have some questions that came up as we went through the staff presentation, and thanks to all of you who delivered those presentations. You did a fantastic job, and I'm so grateful that you saved your best delivery for the public, the people that we serve. I'm feeling a little bit less guilty about all the times you had to run through that with the board now, because you did such a great job. So let's see. My first question is for Mr. Cerruti. Is there an option for that timeline of those phases to differ by school site? And let me explain why I'm asking that. So first, I know that ordinarily we would not do something like that because people have children at different school sites and it presents lots of different complications. But the reason I'm asking is because I did see that in the parental preference results to date, which I know eventually they'll be shared with the public, but you guys gave us a snapshot of where we are to date. There was a pretty significant difference in parental preference among people of color as opposed to non-people of color. And we do have some high school attendance areas of the district with higher concentrations of people of color. So, you know, it seems that the parents who responded are well aware of what the statistics say, that people of color have higher rates of transmission of COVID-19, have higher hospitalization rates, have lower access to medical care. So I wanted to know if that's something that has been discussed at the staff, if that's something that could be discussed going forward, that perhaps the timeline for moving through these phases of reopening could differ by region of the district or by school site.
Thank you, Ms. Chair Espinoza. A couple of thoughts come to mind. Anytime during this time period and the conditions that we're under, when we say timeline, we have to assume the need for flexibility. First and foremost, what we are doing, and so we have confirmation of 58% of our students and the preferences that were provided by the parents. And when we can disaggregate that by individual school site and disaggregate that by subgroups, as you noted, we can even disaggregate that by, for example, specific special education programs within each individual school. And so one of the steps that we're embarking on, and that's why I referenced it at the point when I was sharing information about the 4 options that are available, and I referenced the fact that we're taking next steps to begin targeting families specifically that we don't have that information from, because we do need that information so that individual school sites and our principals are examining that data so they know, for example, exactly the responses that their parents, the parents who have responded, the selections that their preferences, and in addition to that, they know who hasn't so that they can reach out. That will enable the principals to begin to look at their schedules in terms of who plans to come to school and who doesn't plan to come to school, because they're preferring one of the distance models that we have. In addition to that is we track, Tommy and her team are tracking COVID data daily. And so in terms of finding out where, for example, if there are any cases that have emerged. And so I hope I'm answering the question in that all of our schools are at a similar point in analyzing the data. That's the first portion of it that will begin next week, is looking at the preferences that have been made, getting information from families who haven't made those preferences known yet, so that we can begin to schedule, develop master schedules, place students into classes, as well as staffing considerations in terms of who may be teaching under the transitional model or who may be full-time distance teachers. We hope that all of our schools are able to progress at the same time so that we can be starting up for all 18 of our year-round schools on the 3rd. But there certainly could be conditions. I like to think that operationally, we will be able to have all of our schools starting at the same time, but there certainly could be conditions that emerge in terms of the health conditions that could adjust things for an individual school.
Thank you, Mr. Cerruti.
That's a piece I think, regionally, where there are hot spots, and those kinds of things, so there could be significant differences in what individual schools are doing based on what happens to be going on, locally. As big as we are, 320 square miles, we're not going to have a universal exposure across the entire district. So I think the idea of shooting for these dates, I think are the targets, but flexibility is going to be part of the ballgame for sure.
Thank you both. As you spoke, Mr. Cerruti, I was reminded that I believe the county public health department actually provides a breakdown of their transmission and hospitalization data by zip code. So that's where I was going with it. Let's see, moving down the line. For Tommy, next question. This is actually more of a comment, but it goes to this part. So I have concerns about the passive screening as opposed to an active type of model. So I have heard of so many organizations where the active screening has been invaluable in catching cases of COVID-19 and particularly asymptomatic cases of COVID-19. And I'm concerned that we are missing a critical opportunity to, frankly, reduce incidence of the virus in our community from the start of our transition plan. So can you tell me how you arrived at the recommendation, or how the task force, of course, arrived at the recommendation for passive screening?
Yes. So the reason for our recommendation for passive, at the beginning, it was also one, availability and accessibility of thermometers for each site. The time it would take to take all students and staff temperatures at the beginning of each school day. And also just, there were concerns from some staff for liability, confidentiality purposes of taking screenings at school as well. And working with Sacramento County Public Health and having them approve and review our recommendations. You know, they did, you know, Dr. Kasiri did state that us working, and the main thing for the screenings was to do education on how to recognize those symptoms. Because as you said, even students that come on campus could be asymptomatic. And even if we do the screenings in the mornings, they may not show their symptoms and may just develop later on, or still just show asymptomatic symptoms while at school. And so the most important part that Dr. Kasiri stated was that we just need to really educate our staff and train them on how to recognize those symptoms, because even in the mornings, students may not even show that they do have those symptoms. And so providing that information to families and staff is what's the most important at this time.
Okay, thank you. You know, as you spoke, you reminded me, I also watched that Senate Health Education and Labor Committee hearing this morning, in which Dr. Fauci and members of the CDC spoke. And it's interesting that the folks who were, you know, most strident in demanding that schools open now are operating on a vision of the resources that are available to us that is very different than the resources that are actually available to us. And one example was that they thought that if we reopened, we would be able to do preemptive, proactive, school-wide, all employees, all student screenings every 2 weeks. So that is just so far from the capacity that we have for the reasons that you mentioned, and so many others. So I just wanted to point that out. Okay, that is my last question for you. Thank you so much, Tommy. My next question, quick question for Marty Fine, if you're still with us. There you are.
Wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
You mentioned small group interventions on Mondays, I believe, for the secondary schedule. Is it your understanding that those would be in person, since that's a day that a lot of distance learning is going on, or online, or both?
They could be both, definitely. Students that are in school that day, there's a possibility for them to have lunch on site if staffed accordingly, and there was a place for them, and then they could have their small group intervention at school. Noting though that the classroom teacher would not be able to provide these extra services because they'd be involved in the distance learning aspect with the other half of their class.
Mm-hmm.
But with the support of the expanded learning team and others on site, academic intervention teachers, special education teachers, etc., that is a possibility.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fine.
You're welcome.
That's the only question I have for you. Next question is for John Dixon. Come on down, Mr. Dixon.
Here I am.
Hello. So 2 questions for you. First, the secondary schedule has 15 minutes between periods. How will classrooms be cleaned or sanitized during that 15-minute period? Is this where the students in that second class of the day have the option of sanitizing their area? Or how?
Yes, that's the thinking behind it, that at the secondary level, there would be an option to for students to provide support in cleaning the class during those transitions.
Okay, excellent. Let's see, and I've heard a lot of questions even during this hearing. People are wondering which schools would get a 4x4 and which schools would get a 6-period day. I think I know the answer, but do you mind answering that question just for the?
Yeah, I don't have them all memorized, which schools are on 4x4s and which are on 6-period days. I think it's close to a 50-50 split at the middle schools. At the high school, Pleasant Grove and Elk Grove are the 2 high schools that are on the 6-period day.
Okay, and I didn't mean to pop quiz you, but generally speaking, can we say that the plan is to have schools stay as close as possible with the schedule that they have now, right? If they're 4x4 now or 6-period day, that's what they would keep?
Yes, that's the purpose of providing the 2 options, so that schools wouldn't have to drastically deviate from their current structures.
Excellent, excellent, which is exactly the purpose of a transitional plan, right? To make it easier to go back to full in-person instruction. Let's see. I think I lied. I have one more question for you, Mr. Dixon. A lot of parents are wondering about how much discretion, if any, or opportunity to express a preference they might have as to which cohorts their students will be assigned to, especially in cases where they have more than one student either at the same school or at a different school, if either childcare or transportation will be considered. Could you address that?
Yeah, it's our intent to have schools reach out to families as they begin to get into the more detailed work of creating schedules. And then, while I think it would be an extension, exaggeration or extension to say that we'd be able to honor every scenario. I think we would give it the utmost of our attention to ensure that families are on the same cohort.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Mr. Dixon. That's all I have for you.
You're welcome.
And those are all of my questions. Just a couple of quick comments along that line. I am so pleased that staff has developed this option of distance learning being connected to the site, which is different than what we are currently offering. It is just so critically important that students still have that connection and opportunity to participate in extracurriculars and all those things. And let's see, I was also very much pleased, I skipped over FACE, but Lisa Levasseur, I was so pleased to hear that you are developing additional webinars and resources for parents to support their academic and emotional development of their students. This is something that's I think been overdue for us, particularly because we're a district that does not have universal preschool. So I'm so excited that is in development, and it is yet another way in which we will be better when we come out of this, because these are ongoing, these are resources that we are developing now in response to the pandemic, but it fills a need that existed pre-pandemic. So I'm very pleased to see that. So with that, I do have some thoughts that I developed as I was listening to the public comment, and please bear with me because there were a lot of comments, and I have a lot of comments. So my first is that transparency is critical. My goal always is to explain the rationale for my decision making and to give the people we serve a sense of what to expect as best as possible. This transition plan, which is still a work in progress, is not ideal, but it is an improvement on what we were able to provide in the spring. And I'm confident that by the time we're done, it will be the best we can offer. This plan will show us, it will tell us when it is safe to fully reopen, which we are all eager to see. I want to address some of the major themes that we heard from the community. So one of the major questions is, why not reopen fully now? And I want to make sure that folks didn't feel that we were glossing over that. So why not reopen now? In my mind, there are, why not reopen fully? There are many reasons. An unreasonable fear is not one of them. I think the district and certainly myself have been fact-based every step of the way. Someone raised the question of whether or not the board is caving to public pressure. And I want to say that I too worried that other elected officials elsewhere would be overly influenced by public pressure. In fact, I still do. But I can only speak for myself. With respect to being under public pressure, this isn't my first rodeo. I would gladly go out with a clear conscience, knowing that I made the best decision for our students, even if it wasn't the politically popular one. I mentioned facts. We are fact-based, so I want to cite some of the facts that
Nancy,
influenced me. Yes, ma'am.
you were breaking up a little bit. I don't know if there's any adjustment you can make. You're understandable, but hard. You break up a little bit.
I do not, ma'am.
All right, I'm sorry for interrupting. I was just trying to make it a little easier to.
No, I appreciate it. Let me know if that continues, please.
The one thing, Nancy, that works sometimes that's a little bit odd would be if you turn your video off, then your sound will be really better. If you sometimes, but I know that's probably your name would be there and your voice might come through clearer. So sometimes that works depending on what the connection is at the time.
Okay, let me try to proceed, and if I need to do that, I will. Let me know, guys. So sometimes we have information that the general public is not yet aware of, which was, I think, the case when we made the decision to close in-person instruction. Right now, that's the case with things like the growing backlog of COVID-19 testing and tracing here in Sacramento County. In fact, I have 3 family members not in Sacramento County who are battling COVID-19 right now. 2 of them struggled to get COVID-19 tests, even though they work in a hospital. We always try to share the data with the public when we don't think they have it, especially when it serves the basis for our decision. So some of those facts that I cited, preeminent among them is the Sacramento County trends, the increased infection and hospitalization rates. So respectfully to all of you who have been citing low infection rates, you are operating on outdated information. That is how quickly things are changing. There is also a lag in reporting, so it could be even higher than what we know now. The latest medical reporting talks about new COVID-linked syndrome in children. We know also from the medical reporting that the strain of the virus in the US is different than the one that existed in the countries that were hit with the epidemic early. We are still in the process of learning its characteristics, which differ from what we knew from those early countries. So again, with due respect to folks who are arguing for a full reopen due to lower transmission rates among children, I think it's important to point out 2 things. One, that data was collected under distance learning circumstances, right? It wasn't collected under full reopen scenarios. And 2, approximately 6,000 adults work in our schools, and their lives are not expendable. The CDC yesterday said that there is 10 times more virus out there than currently detected. The CDC and the White House COVID-19 Task Force, in testimony to the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and I think Pensions Committee today, said that it's going to get much worse, in fact. And these organizations are part of an administration that is not known for fear-mongering around this virus. Today, several states announced quarantine requirements for travelers from California. So my sense, I'm trying to give you a sense of it's not just El Group Unified. No one here is panicking. I also want to talk about our physical limitations. We have set up and I think all of us, if not most of us, toured some model school sites yesterday, both elementary, middle, and high school. Those model school sites are in fact trying out different layouts, ingress, egress, signage. That too is a work in progress. But We are the 5th largest school district in the state. The facilities do not exist that would allow us to provide socially distant, full-time, in-person instruction to 64,000 students. If they did, there would not be enough buses or bus drivers in the state to meet the transportation that would be required. So I'm interested in learning what other districts are doing. Mr. Forcina mentioned several, and if it would be possible, staff are making a request. I would love to see maybe a board communication with a summary of what I get, frankly, what they're sacrificing to be able to do that. At minimum, if you could get us some links, I would greatly appreciate that. I do agree with the comments, well, for some, that distance learning in the spring was a nightmare. I believe that to be true. Not universally, but I know that was the case for a lot of families, and that breaks my heart because I don't wake up every morning excited to do this job for that to be the result. Improvements in distance learning were not really discussed in the presentation, but there are many, and note to staff, these are critical elements of plans going forward. So I don't want this to be lost, so I'm going to highlight a few of these points. The fact that distance learning is defined as actual interaction between teachers and students. That is already an improvement over what we had in the spring. The fact that additional training has been taking place and will continue taking place for teachers and will be increasingly available for parents. I hope that that will commence, if possible, prior to the start of the school year and continue throughout the entire school year, or for as long as we have to do, distance or hybrid learning. There are additional small group intervention and individual supports that were not available in the spring. Class sizes will be 50% of normal in-person days. That's a fantasy that those of us in the underfunded education in California could only dream of. That's going to be one positive that will come out of this. We're going to provide things like cameras for teachers so they don't have to sit in front of their laptop the entire time when they're doing their distance instruction. They will be able to provide more dynamic teaching, and they'll have more flexibility. We also didn't talk in detail about a huge area, which is more and more consistent in-person instruction for special education students. Staff didn't go over those schedules for self-contained special education classrooms, but I believe they are on the presentation that was posted. So I encourage folks to look at that if you're interested. I want to thank everyone who has contacted me. I read every single message, and I will reply. I'm a little behind right now. I received so many thoughtful messages that helped me really to visualize the experience of students and families under a variety of constraints and needs. And truly, parents, employees, you really outdid yourself with sharing and explaining your circumstances to me. So I'm going to give you a bit of homework now. Please let me know what you think of this plan after having heard the presentation from staff. What was better than you expected? What new concerns arose for you? The second major question I want to address is why not remain in distance learning full-time? I want to state first that distance learning will remain an option for those who want it, and staff, it is critical to me that that choice remain. Parents and employees were incredibly vulnerable and candid in their messages, although they expressed a variety of opinions. Frankly, they're all right. Let me explain. First, I will say that mental health matters. Parents expressed concerns about seeing depression and even suicide attempts among their children. Pediatricians in the community and Dr. Kasiri, the Sacramento County Public Health official, also confirmed this. Sometimes mental health is also a life or death issue, and I think this is one of them. Parents describe their homes as war zones from the stress of distance learning. This isn't sustainable over the long term. And to go back to those facts that are important to me, we're looking at least one more year before there's a vaccine developed, less time to deploy it. So we need to have in our transitional plan something that is sustainable. My initial reaction to any hybrid plan was that it's unworkable for working parents, regardless of whether or not they're able to work from home. Pre-pandemic, it was next to impossible to get part-week childcare, and now preschools and daycare facilities are at 50% capacity because of the measures that the state agencies that govern them have had them put into place. My own son's preschool is at its new lower capacity due to COVID-19 restrictions, and there's no relief in sight for me for the next year. But I've come to believe that instead of asking what the transitional plan lacks that pre-pandemic instruction offered, we should be asking what is actually within our power to offer now? What is the best that we can do now? We're not living in a pre-pandemic world. That world doesn't exist anymore. With all preschools and childcare centers operating under the same state guidelines, our district needs to seek state relief on behalf of the providers that work with us so that we can offer more capacity, especially to our employees. That is something I would like to see. No working parent has it fully under control. I don't believe it was evident, but right when I was asking my first question today, I had a naked toddler run into the room. Regular watchers of our meeting have also seen my son appear in full superhero costume. And often I have days that I feel like being a good employee means that I have failed as a parent, or vice versa. So far, I have failed miserably as a preschool teacher. I too am worried about the effects all of this is having on my son. I'm living this with you. I've heard from teachers and other employees who are eager to return to work in person with our students. I appreciate your commitment to your students. I hear your concerns about exposure to COVID-19. It's imperative to me that employees whose health conditions put them in high-risk categories have the option to either teach distance learning full-time or have some other appropriate accommodation or reassignment. It's also imperative to me that school sites are redesigned to minimize exposure and that all employees be provided with personal protective equipment appropriate to their work. Also, I hear our employees regarding their concerns with more practical challenges like securing childcare. These are serious concerns, but they're not insurmountable. Elk Grove Unified employees have worked with district leaders in times of crisis before. You have sacrificed for our students during times the state dramatically cut education funding. You're engaging now in tough conversations and working hand in hand with us to change the culture across our organization with respect to racial and equity issues. Please continue to work with us to develop solutions for this crisis. I want to address the lack of in-person student contact time. I hate it, but we will develop a plan that is the best that we can do. Allowing students to remain in school for 2 full days as opposed to the part days would mean that your student would go 3 to 4 days without having contact with their teacher, which I personally feel would be worse. And the fact that students are back in school part-time to me is not really the point of this transition model. I think the fact that there are smaller that there are benefits to that both educationally and with respect to health and the public health monitoring that we need to do. I also want to address the question about, is this the model we'll use at the start of the school year? It is too soon to tell. Conditions, including what we know about the virus, requirements that are put on our school district by various levels of governmental agencies, all of that changes every few days. Whenever we do implement the transitional plan, we need to expect that quarantines will require us temporarily to return to distance learning. The benefit of this plan is that those quarantines would be limited to individual classrooms as opposed to a large proportion of a school. Remember, there's a lot more virus out there than currently detected. But I don't want folks to be discouraged about having participated in this process. This is still useful because we need to be ready to implement the transition plan as soon as possible. So in closing, yay. No one likes to be the bearer of bad news. I certainly don't. But the people we serve deserve transparency and a sense of what's to come to the best of our ability to predict it. I hope you've heard enough through this public decision-making process to understand the constraints under which we're operating, and that these discussions will help you be at peace with the options that we will be able to offer next year. I hope you've heard from your fellow parents and employees whose opinions and experiences are different than your own. This roller coaster ride we're on isn't even close to being over. I know we're all under an unusual degree of stress, but we need to model patience and compassion for our students. After all, they're the reason we're all engaged in this process. They take their cues from us. The better we cope, the better they cope. Thank you. That's all for me, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Charis Espinoza. Dr. Martinez-O'Leary?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Headphones? Okay.
Thank you.
Just making sure, double checking. So I would like to.
Excuse me,
Oh.
Madam President.
Yes.
The action items that we have left, I believe they should be called upon before midnight.
We had one that had to be called on before midnight. Are you asking me to jump ahead before we finish our comment?
I thought we had to have the action items, all of them completed by midnight.
No, it was just item number 4 because it had to be faxed into a government agency before midnight. Thank you, Mr. Madison.
Okay.
Do we have to extend our meeting time anymore, or we're fine?
No, we left that open-ended on purpose.
Okay, just making sure. Thank you. So, I just want to start off with, I appreciate all the feedback that we received, all the emails. I know my colleagues have alluded to many of the components that go in with this decision. And for me, I always go back to we're in unprecedented times, a very fluid situation that is changing day by day, given the circumstances of the COVID. And we can't have that roadmap all the time in front of us, given the history of what's happening with the virus. It'd be an ideal situation, and going back to early March, when we had to make those critical decisions, being that we were in a known state of time with closing our school sites. And now we're before you today talking about this transitional plan and this model put forth. And being a product of this district myself, a student and a former employee, I know Elk Grove is always known for a name and always known as a model for other districts to follow. And for me, that's because of the leadership that's been in Elk Grove and the administration, but also not just the leadership, our staff, our employees, our teachers, our classified transportation, I can go on and on. And this model and this transition is another thing that we're looking to really implement change, right, in unknown, uncertain times. And having the buy-in of our stakeholders and our community is really important. That's why everybody's voice, every comment, every email, every contact is critical, it's important, because we represent our communities. And for me, looking at the overall presentation tonight, I think there was very thorough work that was completed by the team, the tactical teams, and I really appreciate that, because there was very many questions and very many components that had to be answered. And I'll just start off with some of my experience also with participating in the workshop earlier in the week. I got to hear individually from each of the different schedules that were presented and the different options that our parents would have. And I just want to say, first and foremost, distance learning, having that as an option, because some of our families are not ready to send their students back to school, be a given different reasons it may be. And so I appreciate the fact that we have that on the option for our parents and our families. I also appreciate the fact that the teams were broken up with different employees in different groups that were each on those tactical teams and helping with the decision making in the plan that's brought for us all today. And so I know I had questions around, and the similar questions were when cohort models were presented to us, that if students were able to, or they had siblings maybe on a different cohort, you know, how would that work for families? Is that something similar to what my colleague has? Is that something that could be considered as a priority being factored in? I also have questions and ask those questions as well of our district staff about after school programs and ways that we can possibly help provide more intervention one-on-one with our students. And so again, that's at the forefront of my mind. And definitely with any loss of learning, how can we help those students who really need more help and engagement one-on-one? And so I've, you know, asked those questions during the time. And then moving forward to, you know, this week, just yesterday, being able to get a tour of one of our school sites to see what the 6 feet social distancing would look like for our students on campus, and what that means for our science labs, for our different rooms where our students would be having to interact with teachers, but at a distance. And so for me, it's really critical to understand those components and making sure that we're asking all those questions for the health and safety of all students and the wellness of them all. And I really appreciate the fact giving that tour the other day of the campus as well, because they walked us through even an isolation room or what that might look like. Say if a student came up and was identified with some symptoms, and where they would possibly be able to go to get the care they needed immediately, and then follow up with procedures and protocols. Again, I think that's outlined in our first few slides in the presentation tonight, right? We have moderate, low risk, and the high risk, right? And so for me, all of that information is not just one component. There's many different components that we're looking at to make sure that this transition is something that our families feel comfortable with for this plan. I'm keeping in mind that, you know, the plan is ultimately to go back full-time to school. That's ideal for all our students, right? When we talk about mental health, the needs of our families, and the different services and access to things that our students would regularly receive if they were full-time in person every day of the week, you know, and how we can try to start that back gradually for those families, I think is really critical. I just want to say that I'm aware of the data that's out there, and I just think, like, for us, it's constantly changing. We're looking at data in real time and numbers at real time, whether that be by the federal government, the state level, our updates that we're regularly receiving. But I do have questions and would like more information as well on our neighboring districts, those who have decided to go back full implementation. How is that working out for them as far, and I know some of them are still in the planning phase similar to us, so they may not be able to give us the actual numbers of what that's looking like. But, you know, for me, I do have questions on if we were to go back full time, what does that mean as far as the case numbers of students or exposure to more students, but also how has that worked out with the districts and all of their labor bargaining units as well. So I have those types of questions where I think board communication would really be ideal, with just some general information, so we could look at other school districts outside our area just to get some more feedback and ideas. Again, I really appreciate the time that went into this plan. I appreciate the constant communication between the district staff and, you know, the board. But I also want to continue with that. There are still many, many questions, I think, that, you know, have to continue to be ongoing, and that this decision for me is not an easy one, because I am a parent myself. And I think of, you know, I don't want to put any children in harm's way, but at the same time, I know that learning is really difficult when it's solely online. For some students it works, and some students it may not, and they may have to have an in-person option. So I think this cohort model is a start to getting back to that full transition to a full time, and seen as a pilot per se of how this works, and then how can we successfully implement going back to school full time, 5 days a week. And I just want to thank the teams that have worked on the information. I know it's been a long, lengthy evening, but again, I look forward to future discussions where we can, and future communications where we can get some more of these very detailed questions answered. Also, look forward to the site feedback. I appreciate the survey responses that we received in our board communication with the breakdown of what families preferred, but also I would like to see what that looks like too, site by site as well, and what that looks like once the site teams start meeting, what it might look like for them, typical days, and what is it they really need per se from our district leadership to help them feel comfortable with any type of moving forward with the transition that we're looking at before us today. So I just wanted to mention those comments. You know, again, I appreciate the work that's gone into the plan, but for me, it's still moving, and we're creating things as we're going along. Like I said, for me, there's no plan book to go into this. We're creating the plan as we're moving, almost like building the tracks as the train is moving along, and it's moving so quickly. And so I think, though, with the teams that we had made up that went into this plan and the thought process, there's many questions. As you can see, there was food service, there's transportation, all of those components went into this. And there's so many different, more in-depth questions that I know one person can't gather all of that information. That's why I really want to hear the feedback of the sites as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Madison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any questions for the staff at this time or this late in the morning now. And I don't want to be redundant. I think Dr. Crystal Martinez-O'Leary had a lot of my comments that I had down, so hopefully I will not be redundant in that area. First of all, I'd just like to really thank the staff for all the tireless work that they put into this transition plan. And I don't think it would have happened if it hadn't been for all strategic committees. I know teachers were involved. I know some parents were involved. So I really appreciate that. I mean, this is pretty well thought out on a lot of different avenues. I know as we move forward, things are going to change. I just really, you know, with our country and what we're going through in the midst of a war with the virus right now, and attempting to craft a plan to continue educating all of our students is a really daunting task right now. And every day or every week, we are faced with changes to the plan, to the transition plan, and in dealing with the COVID-19. Personally, I just can't imagine that we can have all of our students open up as normal with this COVID-19 situation going on, and try and fulfill our state constitution duties as board members, and to make certain that all of our students are at least safe, or attempting to make them safe. You know, I hear, you know, Fresno or Roseville, some of them, whatever, large to small schools, say, well, everybody's going to come back to school. Are they really adhering to the state guidelines or the county guidelines and their constitutional duties of making an attempt to make all kids safe? I as well too got the opportunity to tour a class, a high school. I don't think all of our board members were there, but it was at least more than half of them. And I was thoroughly impressed on their plans, what they were attempting to do to make our kids safe, examples of a 35 student classroom down to 15 or so, and how we had them spaced apart. So they're working very hard, diligently, in trying to make the best return to school as possible. I appreciate all the questions from our parents and from teachers and educators tonight. I mean, it took a lot to go through all that. It was educational to listen to it. And we certainly want to strive to answer as much as we can and to have a safe return to school. Now, as a veteran board member, I've gone through many crises in this district, and we had tremendous reliability, our staff, of doing the right thing and making certain that we stay on a path of educating kids, being fiscal solvent, and adhering to rules and regulations. And I have no doubt that we will continue to do that. There's a lot of concern out there, rightfully so, the best interests of their kids, their parents, etc. We've heard all of it tonight, and I don't take it lightly at all. But I do feel that the transition plan that we have in place has a lot of flexibility to it. It's certainly not etched in stone. I think that we're working on it every day. I know the staff, we can sit here today, it's after midnight, it's technically Wednesday, and tomorrow we can all wake up where something drastically can happen. Maybe we might not even open up school again. We don't.
Yes, don't say that.
I hope not. But I'm just saying that we get kind of bad news every day, what's going on in the county. And we're here to teach kids and to make certain they're safe. And that's what I think our ultimate goal is. And again, I have full confidence in our staff. I think there's still a lot of unknowns we don't have. But I think we're going to address all of it. And I just certainly don't want all of us or anybody to panic at this time. Give it a lot of thought. We want a lot of our community, our input from our parents, all the way around. So with that, I'll stop and yield. I know we still got quite a few to go through tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. Ms. Singh Allen? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Mr. Perez. It's before Ms. Singh Allen. Mr. Perez, are you with us? I know he has to walk sometimes. Oh, there you are.
Yeah, I'm walking right now. I have a bad cramp. Why don't you go down and have Bobby go? Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Singh Allen?
Happy to.
Thank you.
All right. You know, I'm an active listener, so I've been taking notes since the presentation, and I'll probably be reading the notes so that I capture everything. But I do want to, before I read what I've written here, I want to thank the 588 participants that are still with us as we go into our, 7 hours and 18 minutes. It just shows you how important this decision is. This is not easy. And I honestly can say there is not a single person that spoke this evening that doesn't have the best interest of the children in mind. So I really want to first of all thank our superintendent, Mr. Cerruti, and our amazing team, and all of those departments that presented their plans, if you will. And we as a board had an opportunity to meet individually as well to get more details and ask questions. but there's a lot of work and a lot of teamwork that went into developing that. And I know in my heart that it was done from a place of love and a place for doing what's best for kids. So first and foremost, I want to thank you and recognize you for all of that. You know, we're not voting tonight. This is guidance. And I think what's so important for everybody that's still with us tonight to listen to, this is just one phase, one step. We still have to go through the negotiations with our bargaining units to come up with what the actual plan is going to look like. So that's why tonight is not a vote. This is just hearing back board feedback on sort of a direction of where we want to be. So I think that that's really important. I'm going to go to some of my notes here that I wrote here, and I will say I did not come into this meeting with a predetermined outcome of what I wanted to say. I wanted to come to this with an open mind and hear everyone. I've read every comment. I received a comment just as late as 12:04 from Amy. Amy, I see your comments, and I too am concerned with what you've raised here with wanting a desire to return to school. I know how important that is. I've read all of the comments, and like all of my colleagues, I've received hundreds. I've received texts even going in the middle of the night. So between phone calls and text messages and messenger and emails and personal contact, I've heard you. But hearing you doesn't mean that I will necessarily do what you want me to do, but I heard you. And that's important to me, because no matter where we land, there's going to be a group that's going to be upset. And I understand that. No one said leadership was easy. Leadership is hard. And these shoes that we fill right now, we take that responsibility very seriously. This is not a glamorous job, coming here, sitting here for 7 hours, talking about school plans. But because it's important, we are here tonight. Deciding when and how to reopen schools amidst a global pandemic is a tough decision that has been weighing on me. I've heard from parents with split opinions on what the school year should look like. Half either want a hybrid system or a return to school fully, or some completely distance learning. So it's been a full range of 3 different ideas. Teachers have also spoken. We love our teachers and can't overlook their feedback. 63% surveyed indicated a preference to the hybrid model. I've also heard from some teachers who not only feel unsafe to return, but prefer just 100% distance learning. And a few also reached out to me who wanted to go back with 100% in-person learning. But 63% hybrid model. The teachers we so value and love, 63% of them said that. I've also heard from staff who prefer either a hybrid model or complete distance learning. The AFSCME survey result came out just prior to our board meeting. Those statistics are equally important. 39% wanted to resume their previous schedule. 37% a hybrid model, with 24% distance learning. This is our workforce. This is the feedback that they're providing. Equally important stakeholder, including our families, our parents, our students, is our workforce. What does this mean this evening? Or I guess it's now this morning. A teacher asked me last week, are we better off now than when the board and the superintendent decided to close schools? The parent surveys were conducted prior to the recent developments of rapid rise in COVID-19 in Sacramento County, and specifically even the city of Elk Grove. We had Dr. Kasiri last week, who warned us of the spread of the virus from large gatherings. Schools, by their nature, are large gatherings. But what do we also know? We know that children learn best through in-person learning through a classroom. We know that there is no vaccine in sight. We know that parents rely on public education for their childcare needs during business hours. We know the economy is crippled and unemployment rates keep rising. We know children's mental health and social and emotional well-being are at risk. We know students thrive with extracurricular activities such as sports and VAPA. What do we do when we have a conflict of expectations and needs? In this case, balancing the parents' needs with protecting and safeguarding not only our students, but our staff. Staff are on the front lines. While the science may show that children may not be contracting COVID-19 in high numbers, they can still spread it. We know the adults can spread it amongst themselves. I read an article, it's dated towards the end of April, I forget the exact date, from the New York Times, that highlighted 50 city school employees that died of the coronavirus. Just like our district, they were beloved staff, paraprofessionals, teachers, administrators, amongst others, because the schools closed too late. We were the first school district to close in California, perhaps even the country. We saved lives. Are we safer today? This question keeps haunting me, and it's what I keep coming back to. I want to reopen safely and fully and get our kids back in the classroom. I want the children to thrive in schools and engage with their teachers and friends. As a mother, my son suffered just like yours, your children. All of his senior activities were gone. All the sports and special events were gone. And we were left with a virtual graduation. Not what I expected the day he was born. When he was born, all parents have those expectations and those milestones we hope to experience with our children. But these are unprecedented times. What are the risks and benefits of these models? Who has distance learning helped or hurt? It's the question I asked during our special meeting. Who would benefit the most from in-person learning, and who would it hurt? How would a transitional model help our students and families and staff? What I know is that distance learning from the spring will not look the same today. Since there was no playbook or script on how or what to do, I am giving grace to all those who pulled it off in a crisis situation. I know in my heart we can and we will do better. There are 4 options before us for consideration as part of our transitional plan. I've heard from hundreds of teachers and families and parents and students, and I know that my decision directly impacts their daily lives. I also know that I have to represent those that didn't contact us. Those for whatever reason either didn't fill out the survey or sent us an email or a text. Their opinions matter as well. I too watched the Senate hearings this morning where Dr. Anthony Fauci raised that getting kids back to school should be the goal for all superintendents. But he also went on to say to use health guidelines to reach that goal. So it wasn't just a blanket statement to just reopen schools, but to use those guidelines to reach that goal. He also said to look at the infection dynamics within the community. Modifying the school schedule and using alternate days and online virtual classrooms to help get kids back to school. He mentioned that in his testimony as well. So to fully appreciate the comments of Mr. Fauci, understand that he fully recognizes the need for a transitional / hybrid model. But we all know the negative consequences and unintended impact of students of them not being in school. It is very high and it is very alarming. The goal should always be to get kids back to school. And I think that that is our goal with this transitional model. We do want to get our kids back to school, but we have to do it in a thoughtful and methodical way. With that understanding in mind and all the points that all of us have raised, I believe that a transitional model provides a plan to return to school full-time in phases. It is not permanent. Remember that. This is not permanent. It allows schools and staff an opportunity to vet a process, to see if things like social distancing are working. Are students and staff complying with safety protocols? What adjustments need to be made? A hybrid model, this transitional model, allows us to examine our own best practices and provides an opportunity to change them as we need. I, of course, still have many questions like all of you. The patchwork schedules that families will experience if children are in different schools is a big concern. Teachers and staff with school-age students and that impact on their own families, that's a concern. But we know that testing is not readily available. It takes weeks now to schedule it, unless you are showing symptoms, in which case you may get it expedited through your doctor, but it's not upon your ability to just walk up and get that test. So testing, tracing, all of those things are still critical to the reopening of schools. I'm still concerned about lost learning, but as we saw in our presentation previously, some of those concerns will be addressed. Mental health and social and emotional well-being with prolonged shelter in place hurts kids in real time. The transitional model keeps a goal of fully reopening in phases is the responsible choice at this time. It provides an opportunity to test the healthcare system. It provides an opportunity to review our own system, but it also provides an opportunity to protect our staff and our students and our families. We have a responsibility to provide public education. We also have an equal responsibility to keep our students, staff, and families safe. I could not live with myself knowing that my actions somehow cost lives. We are providing guidance tonight. We still need to negotiate, like I said, with our bargaining units. So this is just simply step one. There were some reference to other school districts reopening. I can tell you in reading an article today, when Marin County decided to reopen without fully engaging their stakeholders, their bargaining units, they are now getting considerable pushback. In EGUSD, we believe in a collaborative process that includes our bargaining units to come up with the best plan for our district and for our students. So for us as elected officials or as administrators to jump that process and say, let's reopen without including our stakeholders is reckless. So in closing, I just want to say that I love our students, our families, and our staff. We will get through this together. I know that anything that we do will have an equal number of people upset, and I'm okay with that. Leadership is hard, like I said, but when you wear these shoes, you do the best that you can with the information that you have, considering all of the facts before you. I trust our district, and I trust our bargaining units to come up with the best plan for our students to safely reopen schools. And please remember, this is not permanent. So with that, I will just say to the staff, you have a very busy July ahead of you. It is now July 1, so your work begins today at sunrise, which I think is in about 4 hours or so. But I have trust in you, I have faith in you, and I know that we will get through this together because that's what it's going to take. And through all of this hardship and the worst of times, we will see the best of us coming together. And we're already seeing that work. And you've seen some of that work with our plans presented this evening. So with that, I want to thank everybody for participating in this long process. We have heard you. That's why we spent all of this time weighing in all of the considerations and hearing all of the public comments. It was important to get that feedback. So thank you again, staff. I will turn it over to Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Singh Allen. Mr. Perez. You're on mute, Mr. Perez. There you go.
I lost my internet page.
Oh, no.
No, shoot. Anyway, let's go do this. For me, it seems like there's a part missing. We have these committees meeting. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. You have these committees meeting, but I think they should have went to the executive board, the executive body of our district, directors, and then give us their recommendation. Now we're just hearing their input, but I like to hear the executive directors of each of those sections, what their recommendations are. What they support. They're supposed to be giving us some feedback also. So I think there's a big part of this that's missing.
Those were the committee leaders that presented.
Yeah, but do you support those recommendations? I like to know.
We wouldn't be presenting it if I didn't.
So you support transitional program going back?
We have to transition back. Yes.
You support that and all your staff?
Yes.
Okay. And it is within all your staff, they all support going back to school?
No, I'm not speaking. You asked me. I can't speak. You've seen the feedback from our staff. You got the information from Ask Me Today. You've seen the information from the teachers.
Right.
There is no one answer from any group.
But we hired you as the experts. We got an expert in Don Roth with health. We got an expert in curriculum development. We got all these experts. You're supposed to come together and make a recommendation.
This is what we've done.
You just contradict what you said. So anyway, this is an easy decision for me. Let me tell you this. Our number one job is the health and safety of our students, our staff, and our community, and the world. This is a world issue. We save lives. We're bold enough to go forward and save lives. And now we want to let loose our students back in the classroom and bring about community spread like we did during the graduation ceremonies, in which our students went back to the schools and picked up their diplomas with the teachers without no mask. And here we got another spike. That is a shameful situation. We should have had, like I said before, we should have had policies in place. If you go back to school, you wear the mask, both the staff and the student. That didn't happen.
Mr. Perez. Mr. Perez.
Is a spike.
Mr. Perez.
Yes.
Excuse me. I just want to make it clear. I picked up my son's diploma. There was social distancing and masks.
Okay.
100%.
Like I said before, I went to Florence High School and I went to some other places. I saw the pictures on social media. You look at the Sacramento Bee. You look at by the zip code areas. My zip code went up 16 cases. Chet's district, 53 cases. And those aren't the real numbers. And we have students out there that don't have these symptoms. It's spreading. That's why you have the Governor Newsom getting ready to lock us back down. Because too many people are relaxed. And you
Mr. Perez, let me make a point. When you talk about my district, you talk about a 95823, that's a broad zip code. It goes into Sacramento School District.
Correct.
So don't put figures out there that are not true.
Okay. It's Sacramento B. It's right here.
No, you're missing the point.
June 23rd.
It goes into Sacramento School District.
Correct.
That zip code.
Okay.
We are just a small portion of 95823.
Yes. What did
Thank you.
What did the health?
Speak with facts.
We had 160 students. 160 students of the 420. More than half came out with a virus. And when we're going to open up the school, you don't think that's going to happen again?
Mr. Perez, you're not speaking
what numbers
with
you're
facts.
referring to, Mr. Perez?
What? You don't think that when we go to school that these students are not going to wear masks and going out of their cars in a parking lot? Who's going to supervise them in the parking lot when they come to school?
Mr. Perez, you're asking questions. You need to make a summary of what happened today. That's what the doctors did.
But did they
Okay? We don't want to quote the B. We don't want to quote all the stuff that you read on the side. Okay?
I'm going to the health department. These are statistics from the Sacramento County Health Department to the B, their report. Now, that's the fact. You don't. And you need
Perez, we're all aware that the spread is happening right now. That's on the forefront of our minds for sure.
So who's going to be responsible? Every day, I don't lose no sleep because we close the schools early. But when we open up the schools, I don't think any of you would go to the schools because I know some of you got preconditions. I know none of you some of you would walk the halls because your preconditions that you have. And you put these students in the line. So when they get these conditions, they go home to their family, to their uncles, and to their grandparents. It is city. You got to do your constitutional duty to lock it down. Keep it locked down till we got what it called the shot, the vaccine. Yes, I like to have it open, but this virus or another virus could happen next or within a year. It's mutating. By the time we get the virus for this one, it's going to be mutated again. Another time we might have to have series C, E, or F. You people do not know the science. The science. You need to protect our students, the staff, and our community.
So, Mr. Perez, you feel we should not go back?
No.
Okay.
Yes, we should have the best, we call it, I don't call it internet, I call it a technical, like telehealth. We have in the health industry now, we have telehealth. You know, we do all doctors and nurses, they do everything through the internet. Education institutions should get to the 21st century delivery of education using the latest technology and everything. I told you guys before that you should think out of the box. Virtual reality glasses, you could put those on and be around the world with.
Madam Chair, I think we're outside the scope of our jurisdiction.
Yes. Yeah. So anyway, you got to think out of the box. Some of these teachers are doing it out of the box because they're working overtime. They know their students are babysitting their younger sisters and daughters and brothers. And so when they have their mothers come home, they have to go do their homework.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Do you have anything else to speak to about the plan, the transitional plan that we were presented?
It has good intentions, but I believe it's not going to work. It's going to expose community spread within Sacramento County and go beyond. This, like I said before, this is the most important community in California because we have state of California employees, federal employees, It turns the whole Western Hemisphere all the way to the Pacific Rim. And we are doing something really silly, dumb, open up, I think, you know.
All right.
I really do. And yeah, I could get down into the specifics of like 20 students in the classroom of 24. That's not distance learning.
Mr. Perez.
What do you call it? Within 6 feet. I know most of my classes in my district have the oldest schools and the smallest classes.
You can come by and visit the classrooms.
Yes, I am. Well, I am.
Okay, I'm glad to have you.
So, let's go to page number 2. Use student outcomes and programming data, available research, and the feedback from students. Well, Mr. Fosina asked a question prior on the other subject matter. There's his answer. We do have, according to this paper, we have outcome data. And they're going to use it on page 2 to determine the outcomes under this better and long run of delivery of services. So who wrote this? Who did this one? Who can speak to that? Mark?
I'm happy to speak to that.
Yes, because earlier Mr. Fosina said we didn't have nothing in place to do this. Now, do we? Yes or no? What are those instruments that we're going to use in this?
Well, in terms of the data available and continuous improvement processes that we use, we're always analyzing student outcome data, meaning academic data and behavioral data. And we received a great deal of feedback. Thousands of people responded to surveys. Remember, we did 2 different surveys. The first was done after the first week of distance learning, and that provided connectivity and ensuring that our students, families, and staff were able to connect with one another and use the equipment, and the equipment was usable. And then in May, we did a qualitative survey that began to provide feedback. So what exactly was the experience like for our kids and our families and for our staff? And we learned a great deal from that. And then the tactical teams were analyzing research for weeks to enable us to find out what was working in other places at both the academic and social and emotional levels. And so it's the standard practice we use. I'll never say that we're perfect, but in terms of continuous improvement methodologies that we use, it's an expectation of the board, it's an expectation of our superintendent, and it's something that we do with fidelity.
So what state measures are we going to use?
I'm sorry?
What state measures are we going to use?
State measures?
Yes.
Well,
education measures.
Oh, I mean, a lot of the very same state measures. So the LCAP measures, for example, that we use, and any of the data that we have available, a lot of things have changed as a result of testing that wasn't done and things of that nature. But we'll continue to use all the state metrics that are available to us, as well as the internal metrics that we do have.
And how often are you going to do this? Once a year, or by the quarter, or every 6 months?
Well, the way that we analyze data is we analyze actually 3 sources of data: input data, output data, and outcome data. And inputs are things like people, time, and money. So we analyze those areas, and outputs are the programs and activities. And so we analyze our EL program and our special ed programs and our various programs that we have, and looking at the effectiveness and the levels of implementation of those. Then we look at student outcome data, whether it be academic, behavioral, attendance data, those types of things, those outcome data points that Mr. Perez, that you were just referring to, those state outcomes. And we look at how all of those interact and what's the effect that inputs are having on outputs, which are resulting in those outcomes. Hope that made sense, but we do.
Well, you're not answering my question. I asked you, either you do it quarterly, biannually, or
Mr. Perez, if you go back to the program and implementation continuums that we shared earlier this year, those are examples of systems that we have in place that measure, programmatically what we're doing, where we're making investments, what we're doing, and what the outcomes are. So that it's part of an overall system. Mr. Forcina was talking earlier about common end of course exams and those kinds of things, and we're not there yet with regards to common end of course exams. We've been making some progress with the assessment piece, but that's work that's down the road. But Mr. Forcina and I had the conversation. That was a problem in January. I mean, that's not an issue related to what's going on in this COVID situation. We knew interim assessments and end of course assessments common across the district is something that we're working towards. But that's the same challenge. It's not a COVID specific issue, but it does make the work more challenging when you're trying to identify where kids currently are in a given subject area.
Yeah, so what I don't like is that in your LCAPs, you only have it at the end of the year, and you cannot, redo your objectives.
Mr.
We're
Press?
looking at them all year long.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Press.
Yes.
I think you've made your views very clear, sir.
Yes.
Was there anything else you needed to add?
Yes, I'm going through the presentation. And so are we going to have a 14-day quarantine after somebody tests positive, or now they're thinking they might extend it to 29 days?
We'll follow the health department's directive.
Okay, so I was wondering anybody knew that within our school district.
I haven't heard anything beyond 14 days, and I talked with Dr. Kassiri earlier this week, so I haven't heard anything beyond 14 days yet.
In the introduction of the presentation, you didn't seem you're very not supportive, but had trust within the Sacramento County of providing test results within a timely manner, or is that?
I am concerned with the ability of the medical field in general right now to keep up with the testing demands.
Right.
In Sacramento County, that is a challenge, and we've been following it nearly every day, trying to keep track of how soon somebody can get tests. And so that is a concern for me. And it would be a factor in making a final recommendation of kids coming back and staff coming back. If we're back where we were in March and we can't test and we can't contact trace, then this whatever system we put in place isn't going to work. So we have to put pressure on our medical partners to be able to test, and to be able to test quickly, and to be able to get those results turned around, and to be able to have the contact tracing resources in place. And that's critical. And that's one of the things I said in the very opening.
Yeah, well, that's an issue why I don't support this, because the fact that we don't have the culturally linguistic outreach to our communities out there of color.
One of the things, Mr. Perez, hold on one second. One of the things, and I think Ms. Chires Espinoza said it, is we're thinking we'd like to be able to do this in August.
Right.
But I can't tell you for sure we're going to be able to do this in August, and we're going to follow and pay attention to what's going on with the health conditions. And I can't tell you what's going to be in place a month from now, but at some point we have to be ready to do a transitional model. So we're doing the work now. But it could be August 3rd, the transitional model goes into place. It could be November 1st. I don't know. I can't predict that right now, but we have to build the plan. We have to be ready.
The later, the better, because the fact that hopefully by December, they might have a vaccine. So anyway.
I understand what you're saying, Mr. Perez.
Okay. So anyway,
I'm
there's
sorry,
another issue that we have. What's
Tony,
tracing?
Can I make just a quick clarification? I'm uncomfortable with letting something hang out there that you said.
Right.
I also had concerns, as I always do, about our outreach to our linguistic minorities and ethnic minorities. I actually asked those questions of staff beforehand. So not only do you see those breakouts by language group in the parent survey that we did receive, but they also...
You're cutting out.
Okay, sorry. So So in trying to make sure that we got representative samples or at least greater inclusion in the parent survey, we did have staff actually calling folks and using translation services. So I want to make sure that, you know, we may certainly have some work to go in terms of you know, cultural competency as an organization, but that didn't happen with respect to this the survey.
You're cutting out. I didn't hear half of what you said. Yes, I understand we try to do a pretty good job. We're trying to do that, but we're not as good as we should be. All right, all right. Like I said earlier, there are too many variables that affect this outcome of this particular thing, and there's a lot of unmet answers to a lot of questions in which our community today asked. I support a lot of them said that they support distance learning, and the reasoning behind it was very strong. And so, you know, hopefully we go that route and not put our community in jeopardy. This is a life and death situation and a decision that you're gonna have to make. I made mine. You know, you know, we might even have a lawsuit. What's the latest on the lawsuit legal? We got to talk about that.
We had our lawyer here last week about that, Mr. President.
Yes. Today, I think I just read about the legislative body is going to possibly deal with that also at the legislative level.
Yeah, they're working on that now.
Yes. So anyway, but we need to be aware of the legalities again.
For sure.
Because it's so late.
Or early.
Or early. I'm not gonna. You know, we're trying to get there. You know, the main objective is trying to get back to the day one. You know, get back to the schools and be in happy days. But I don't see that. Okay. The behavior issue of high school students, what I have seen and witnessed dealing with teenage pregnancies. You know, our Governor Wilson.
Mr. Press.
Yes.
Way off topic.
No, this is behavior issue. We have this in this issue, behavior. So like, until we change the behavior of our community, that's including adults, you know, they have to be social responsible to wear masks. So are we going to have mandatory, this is another thing. You said, are they going to have mandatory wearing masks every day, regardless? If it seems like it did, if they have the 6 feet distance. That's what what's her name said.
If you recall, Dr. Kassarian last week told us masks needed to be worn when you were less than 6 feet together.
Correct.
Correct. Yes.
Right. But some places they say it's mandatory. So
well, we are following Sacramento County Health Department's guidelines for us. That is our professional advice that we are taking.
No.
Very seriously, and she gives us a ton of time.
We as a district could make it mandatory. Right?
We are using masks in the district right now. We sent the communication out. All of our employees are using masks. If I'm in my office by myself, I'm not wearing a mask.
Right.
When I go down the hallway to visit check in with one of my colleagues, I'm in the hallway, we're wearing masks. So that information is across the entire district right now. So we are wearing masks.
That's what I want to say. Like I said, community spread's a big concern of mine in the high school setting, middle school, elementary, district office, and in our community. You know, be responsible, have good behavior, and wear that mask whenever you're in the public.
Thank you, Mr. Press.
Thank you.
All right. I will keep my comments short. I think there's some key factors I'd like to just hit upon. I apologize if they're repetitive, and I appreciate the comments of my fellow board members and their grace. This is transitional. It's never been done before. I intend to keep asking. This is not a finished piece. At some point, we will need to be requesting numbers from our students. So we may start deciding the class size, the groupings. So I think as your interest, please keep aware and pay attention to our communications, because that will help us know the full offering we can make. I would like to see our special education parents now get involved with our special education committee, our EL committee, our parent advisory committee. It's going to take this to the next step to include a broader, to just branch out. Some of the things that stood out to me tonight, parents wanted 2 full days versus 2 half days. And I would love to see someone look into that a little bit more, and even see if it was equitable to look at that site by site, or probably region by region as we tie things together. I am in support of any modifications that will increase seat time. I believe we need to continue to follow public health guidelines, and we need to continue to be in contact with them. I appreciate the relationship we have with them. And Mr. Hoffman, I know many people spoke of the Academy of Pediatrics suggestions. I forwarded them to Mr. Hoffman. He forwarded them to the Sacramento County Public Health. We are watching these things. I have 3 children at home I would like to send to school, so you are not alone. I believe we do need to get a little bit more information together so we can give parents the full breadth of information so they can make their decisions and make real planning. And I also believe there is an idea of possibly using teachers that want to be distance teachers in collaboration with teachers that would be in the classroom, possibly 2 teachers for 2 classes, one being a distance teacher, one being a classroom teacher, and letting us build our expertise in that area. I would also had heard of, and I'm excited about the idea of some professional development, a summer institute being available to our staff prior to school starting, as I did know they learned much more from the spring, but continuing to offer those opportunities are important. The one thing I'm not worried about is feeding our children, and I would like to shout out for that. I've not had one day that I've worried about children not being able to get food from us, and I really do appreciate that. So I think at this early hour, those are my highest points. And I will add anything extra to staff directly. Thank you. Do you have what you need, Mr. Hoffman? I believe we're ready to move on to our action items.
We have feedback. We'll be moving forward and working with our associations and working through MOUs through the process, and the communication will ramp up with regards to getting information out to our families. Yes, I think we're good.
Okay. And again, I just want to stress, this is what we were presented tonight, and there's room for change, and there's room for wiggles, and there's room for things are going to change in the world. So
that's the only thing we do know.
The only constant we have. So moving on to action item, Elk Grove Charter School petition to renew their charter. Ms. Pinkerton, do we have any public comment?
There is no public comment on this item.
Thank you. Mr. Levine.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, President Albiani, members of the board.
I owe you, my friend.
I'm doing great. Here to present the Elk Grove Charter Schools petition renewal, asking for board action to approve that. Let me share my screen to present our presentation. Let's see here. Can you all see that?
Yes.
There. Okay. All right. I will move through this as quickly as I can. So the purpose of our presentation, of my presentation, is to do a brief overview of the legal requirements for renewing a charter school's petition, to give an overview of the Elk Grove Charter School, the process that Elk Grove Charter and the district has completed in this renewal, and to allow for discussion or any questions in regards to this request to approve the petition. There are some criteria in regards to renewing our petition. So each charter school must be considered for renewal every 5 years. That's dictated by Education Code 47605. In making this decision to approve or deny a petition, there are a few criteria that the governing board needs to determine. Those are if the charter presents a sound educational program, if the petitions, if it demonstrates that it will likely be successful, that the petition contains reasonable, comprehensive descriptions of the components of the school, and if the petition provides a required assurance regarding discrimination, admissions policies, tuition, and the handling of expelled students. These are the required elements, A through O. Those are all in the petition that you've received a copy of. The main requirement for the board or for the authorizer is that you'll consider the academic achievement for all groups of pupils as the most important factor in determining whether to grant a charter renewal. There are 4 criterion to review to renew a charter. However, 3 of those are suspended because they are tied to API scores, which have been suspended. In the next 5-year cycle, there will be new criteria based on the California dashboard. So in essence, there's only 1, criterion 4, which states the academic performance of the school is at least equal to the academic performance of the public schools that the charter school's pupils would otherwise have attended, as well as the academic performance of the schools in the school district in which the charter school is located. I'll speak more to that later. So the process, initially, the revision of the Elk Grove Charter Schools petition began in the fall of 2019 with Elk Grove Charter School staff and our community members. Input was provided by district leadership and legal counsel in the winter of 2019. A draft and final versions of the petition was presented to charter staff and the Charter School Advisory Council in spring of 2020, right before the shutdown, and then via Zoom meeting during the shutdown. Public hearing was opened on June 9th. And then tonight I'm here requesting that the board authorize the renewal of the charter. As a quick overview, Elk Grove Charter School began in 1999, was renewed in 2005, 2010, and 2015. We serve grades 7 through 12 in a hybrid independent study and direct instruction model. We average about 257 students at the state census date. That's the 1st of October. We enroll about 400 students throughout each school year because we have continuous enrollment. Our students are able to complete diploma requirements, either comprehensive or alternative requirements to earn their diploma. We have 236 graduates over the past 3 years, with the highest graduation rate of last year at 84.5%, which was a, sorry, my mind's blanking, it's about a 12% increase from the year before. Staffing includes a principal, vice principal, 9 contracted teachers, 8 hourly, full-time and part-time teachers, full-time counselor, and then 2 full-time and 2 part-time classified staff. School has been accredited by WASC. It received a 6-year WASC accreditation that was suspended. We were supposed to have our 1-day review this spring, but due to COVID-19, that was suspended until, well, we don't know. We'll find out once WASC releases their timelines. Our next full study will be 2023. We do have an active advisory council that meets quarterly. It's made up of 5 members, 1 being a district liaison, others being community and parents. We do follow the LCAP process. We do write our own LCAP. We present that to the board every year. That's been suspended as well, or delayed, as we heard earlier tonight. And then our budget, our 3-year average working budget at the school is about $2.4 million, with our 3-year average expenditure about $2. fund balance right now as well. Looking ahead to this next 5-year cycle, we will be looking to create more opportunities to develop our vision of the future. Who is our program best suited for? To reach out and brand our Elk Grove Charter services, to refine our operations, which includes our staffing process and our professional development and administration. Want to increase involvement of staff, students, parents, and community members, and then ultimately increase enrollment to meet the needs of our identified target population. The findings, we have met, and if you've looked through the petition, we have met all the required elements within the petition. And Elk Grove Charter students, the academic performance is equal to students in the district, taking into account the composition of the student population and the type of program at Elk Grove Charter School. That can be found on page 14 of the petition if you're looking for data points, where we compared the school to like programs, both middle school and alternative schools for high school in Las Flores. Currently working, once the petition is renewed, the school and the district will continue to revise the memorandum of understanding that we have every 5 years. That memorandum or MOU will address the funding, so LCAP reporting, supervisory oversight, district services, assist with staffing, special education, data reporting, and budget and finance. In summary, based on factual findings, the school and the leadership of the district believe that EGCS petitions have met all legal thresholds. Legal counsel as well has been involved in this process. That we present a sound educational program, that we have demonstrated the likelihood to be successful around for a few years now, and that we are providing a reasonable comprehensive description of our program set forth in Ed Code. So the next steps would be a recommendation for the board to take action to approve the renewal petition of the Elk Grove Charter School, and I can answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions from the board?
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
I have 2 family members or friends that went through Elk Grove Charter, so you do great work and it's a great alternative in our educational system.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate that. Absolutely appreciate the support we always get.
You have a board?
We have an advisory council.
Oh, council, you call it advisory council? So
Yes.
how much of your budget, how much is your administrative cost?
Well, we run along the same as the district. About 85% of our school budget is based on staffing.
You got it, 85.
Yeah. Shannon will probably answer that question better than I can.
Really?
Thank you. I'd like to call for a motion to adopt Elk Grove Charter's, adopt the renewal of the Elk Grove Charter School petition.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Singh Allen, seconded by Ms. O'Leary. A roll call vote is called for. Ms. Singh Allen?
Aye.
Mr. Perez?
Aye.
Mr. Madison?
Aye.
Dr. Martinez O'Leary?
Aye.
Ms. Cheras Espinoza?
Aye.
Mr. Forcina?
Aye.
And myself, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. You have the next item as well, the adoption of the Elk Grove Charter Schools COVID-19 Operations Written Report. Ms. Pinkerton, do you have any public comment related to this?
Madam Board President, no.
I'd like to call on Mr. Levine.
Yeah, so for the operations report, so per state regulations that we're requesting that the board approve the written report of the Elk Grove Charter School. To be clear, our report is in line with the district's report as we follow district protocol and district guidance during the school closure and then in the reentry during distance learning.
Excellent. Were there any comments from the board? Questions, actually? Thank you. I'd like to call for a motion to adopt Elk Grove Charter Schools COVID-19 Operations Written Report.
So move.
I'll second.
Moved by Dr. Martinez O'Leary, seconded by Ms. Cheras Espinoza. Roll call vote. Mr. Forcina?
Aye.
Ms. Cheras Espinoza?
Aye.
Dr. Martinez-O'Leary,
Aye.
Mr. Madison,
Aye.
Mr. Perez,
Aye.
Ms. Singh Allen,
Aye.
and myself is affirmative, so that is, I can't even think of the word, unanimous. Thank you. Item number 3, adoption of Elk Grove Unified School District's COVID-19 operations written report. Ms. Pinkerton, is there any public comment related to this?
Madam Board President Albiani, there are no public comments related to this item.
Then we would like to call Mr. Cerruti, please.
Thank you, Madam President. I respectfully request that the board take action to adopt the Elk Grove Unified School District's special education, excuse me, I'm on 4, let me get back to 3. The school district's COVID-19 operations written report.
Comments? Thank you. I'd like to call for a motion to adopt Elk Grove Unified School District's COVID-19 operations written report.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Madison, seconded by Ms. Singh Allen. Ms. Cheras Espinoza, my bad. A roll call vote, Ms. Singh Allen?
Aye.
Mr. Perez?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Madison?
Aye.
Dr. Martinez-O'Leary?
Aye.
Ms. Cheras Espinoza?
Aye.
Mr. Forcina?
Aye.
And an aye for myself makes it unanimous. We have board member and superintendent reports. If you dare. Thank you. Other items from the floor?
Excuse me, Madam President.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to back up. We had a 2x2 with Folsom Cordova, actually the city of Rancho Cordova. Mr. Superintendent and Rob, we were there. And so things were discussed moving forward, how we're opening schools, and also with the proposal for middle and high school. Just wanted to report that out.
Thank you. Thank you for attending. No other items from the floor. I now adjourn the meeting at 1:16 on July 1st. Welcome to July, everybody. Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Woo.